Who would believe it? The baby hidden amongst the treasures is actually a 300-year-old witch with powerful magic. Her magic is potent enough to destroy a nation in an instant. Yet, she was killed by her beloved, a sword piercing her heart. Drawn by the royal bloodline of the dragon clan, her soul was reincarnated as the daughter of her former enemy. Her name is Irina, a 300-year-old witch with extraordinary magic. She lived in seclusion in the deep mountains due to her hatred for humans. One day, the young prince of the Karel kingdom, fleeing from his older brother's pursuit, escaped into the deep mountains and encountered the witch. Having not seen a man for many years, Irina fell in love with the handsome young prince at first sight. Not long after, the witch helped the prince ascend to the throne. However, the prince deceived her. On the promised day of proposal, instead of a ring, he drew a sharp sword. Irina, even with her witch's body, couldn't withstand this betrayal of love. She died instantly, filled with hatred. Due to her unique witch constitution, her magical core remained undamaged, preserving her soul. By wandering for 10 years and absorbing power, she could be reborn. But things didn't go as planned. When she opened her eyes again, Irina found herself reincarnated as a royal baby, promptly receiving a spanking from a servant. This left Irina bewildered. The servant, however, was determined to make the baby cry. Otherwise, the emperor would discard her as a useless burden. Hearing this, Irina feigned a few cries. The servant was overjoyed, saying the princess must live. Confused, Irina wondered why a princess would be threatened with death. Remembering her own demise, she resolved to find the prince and tear him to pieces. But her current body was so frail. So, she tested the limits of this infant body. To her surprise, she discovered her magical power was even greater than in her witch days, a full 5 stars. As a baby witch, she only had 2. Irina began to appreciate her new body, harboring ambitions of conquering the continent. The servant then carried Irina to the palace, where they met the emperor. The emperor immediately noticed Irina's unusual appearance, white hair and red eyes. The servant, however, claimed she resembled the previous emperor, Eskina. Hearing this, Irina suddenly remembered Eskina, an old northern dragon with whom she had a very poor relationship. The emperor, wanting to confirm the dragon bloodline, cast a spell, placing his hand on Irina's small belly. Irina cried out in pain and instinctively bit the emperor's hand. The emperor, startled, immediately stopped the spell. The servant quickly pleaded for mercy, explaining the child's young age. This, however, impressed the emperor, who saw the bite as a sign of unusual spirit. He declared that tomorrow she would choose a sword. The servant, startled, pleaded that Irina was too young. But the emperor, impressed by Irina's resilience to his power, held high expectations for her. He named the newborn Leona. Irina, completely bewildered, was carried away by the servant. After this experience, Irina carefully recalled the emperor's sword. It seemed to be made from a black dragon's tentacle and the fairy queen's wing. Still unsure, Irina tried to dismiss her suspicions, but the servant reminded her of the sword choosing ceremony tomorrow. She would soon be embroiled in the struggle for succession. This led Irina to a bold conjecture. 20 years ago, as a witch, Irina had a deadly battle with the emperor of the Hashi's empire. And that emperor was the old dragon, Eskina, mentioned by the servant. It happened because a Hashi's empire merchant group trespassed on Irina's territory. Irina annihilated them and their goods instantly. Coincidentally, the merchants were transporting the national treasure of the Hashi's empire. This enraged the king of the Hashi's empire, driving him mad with the desire to take Irina's life as recompense for the national treasure. However, Irina was no match for him. She seized the opportunity to use magic to transform into a mouse and escape. This king of the Hashi's empire was the victor in a struggle for power among 38 children of the previous emperor. From this, it seems that this king is the current emperor. Thinking this, the servant informed the baby Irina of her new name, Leona von Hashi's. Irina was dumbfounded. The 1 in a billion chance of being reborn as the daughter of her mortal enemy was truly astounding. However, after careful consideration, Irina, with her 5-star aptitude yet to awaken, felt that this was a great opportunity for a witch to show her true potential. Irina decided that, as the 12th imperial princess, she would fight to the very end. This baby girl, not even a year old, was already planning to eliminate her siblings with a sword and usurp her father's throne. Her name was Leona. She was originally Irina, a powerful 300-year-old witch, betrayed and killed by the one she loved. Her soul, drawn by the dragon bloodline, was reborn as the little princess. Not only did she bite her father the moment she saw him, she also spat at him. The emperor had never seen such a fierce daughter. Immediately, he decided to have her compete with her siblings for the right of succession. However, Leona's 5-star aptitude was still dormant, so she could only accept her father's selection of servants. The servants brought the little princess to a crowded hall. Leona sat obediently and waited patiently, thinking to herself, I must use this body to become emperor and conquer the continent. At that moment, the servant instructed Leona to choose her own sword. Leona's wide eyes glanced around. Choosing a sword wasn't about literally picking a weapon. It was about choosing followers who would swear to protect her as their emperor. Understanding this, Leona smiled slyly, thinking it would be easy. Among the throng of people, she directly chose a silver-haired woman. Seeing this, a green-haired man muttered, I can't believe the little princess chose her. Could His Majesty have been right? The green-haired man was Herrick, the emperor's aide. The previous night, he had discussed the little princess, Leona, with the emperor, who had asked Herrick to keep an eye on her. Herrick had been puzzled. The emperor's first son was an all-around genius, and even the second prince, a rare ice mage, was overlooked. The other princes were also capable. Yet, the emperor wanted him to pay attention to Leona, who wasn't even a year old. Herrick wondered just how powerful she could be. He witnessed Leona choose Case, which made him think the emperor was right. But at the same time, he saw Leona's adorable appearance and felt his heart skip a beat. He couldn't resist reaching out to poke Leona's little cheek. Suddenly, Herrick's assistant asked if he was all right. Herrick, overwhelmed by Leona's cuteness, fainted. Everyone cried out for help, which caught Leona's attention. Herrick had crossed paths with Arena before. He was a top-tier elite knight, known as the Ruination Knight, who had single-handedly reduced 5 tribes to ruins in half a day. He had also once trespassed on Arena's territory when she was a witch and had been soundly defeated. Remembering this, Leona looked at Herrick and thought, he's become so strong. Humans grow up so fast. But why is he smiling foolishly at me and then fainting? Leona didn't dwell on it, because Case, the necromancer, had approached her. Leona remembered hearing about him long ago in the deep mountains. Case was a necromancer who could summon an endless army of undead as long as he had corpses. He had even single-handedly slain 20 wyverns and turned them into undead. He even annihilated the kingdom that had attempted to assassinate him overnight. Just hearing this is impressive. It's a shame Leona never had the chance to spar with him. This time, Leona felt particularly lucky. That's why she chose him at first glance. But seeing the dazed Case before her, Leona figured he, like herself, had lived in the mountains for years, so there was no opportunity to spar. But now that she's met him, how will Case become Leona's sword? Never had he seen such a powerful little girl. Her strength before even turning 1 year old astonished a lifetime. Even the guards didn't dare meet her gaze. Leona, with the reincarnated soul of the witch Arena. From birth, she resisted her father, the Emperor's test of strength. Father. Immediately, the Emperor had Leona choose a personal guard to seize the right of succession. Leona couldn't refuse. Immediately, in the hall, she picked the strongest necromancer, the one who could control corpses. Case. After returning, Leona thought carefully. Such a powerful necromancer. Why would he be reduced to caring for a child less than a year old? With this question in mind, Leona looked at the silent Case beside her. Deciding to get on good terms with him first, she reached out to greet him. But upon seeing this, Case retreated repeatedly. Leona felt wronged. She hadn't done anything, so why was he backing away? Case didn't understand what the less-than-year-old Leona was trying to do by waving. This made Leona, young and unable to speak, break out in a sweat. Seeing this, Case stepped forward and grabbed Leona's small hand. But his grip was too strong. Leona immediately burst into tears. Hearing the cries, the nurse rushed in and anxiously asked what was wrong with Leona. She hurriedly told Case to release Leona's hand. But Case felt the matter wasn't that simple. He grabbed the doctor by the collar and dragged him over, wanting to examine Leona. Leona indicated she didn't recognize the man before her. The doctor politely introduced himself to Leona. My name is Bellerophon. I'm here to examine you. Even after knowing this, Leona still looked suspicious. Why wasn't her own doctor being used? Bellerophon explained that Case rarely spoke, so dragging him here to see the imperial princess must be serious. The next moment, the doctor placed his hand on Leona's small hand. Suddenly, a dazzling, powerful spiritual energy bloomed in her hand. The doctor was stunned. He hurriedly told the servants to fetch the royal physician. Startled by the previous scene, Bellerophon felt that the spiritual energy within Leona was going berserk. 5-star level spiritual energy was surging within her. He also said that someone might have infused spiritual energy into Leona's body. Without timely treatment, her life could be in danger. But Leona said it was her life attribute acting up. It was caused by the excitement of thinking about becoming emperor. The people around her began to speculate wildly. Soon, Leona's personal physician began to examine her. Leona then peacefully fell asleep. The personal physician said there was nothing serious. A few days of rest would be enough. At this moment, the anxious Case looked at the sleeping Leona. He thought she looked like a little rabbit, especially cute. He also felt that although Leona was small, she was very powerful. He then poked her. No one could resist her adorable little face. Case declared he would definitely protect Leona. The next day, Leona was awakened by the sound of servants moving things. Originally, Leona was supposed to live here until she was 5, but the young Leona's abilities were recognized by her father, the emperor. After choosing a guard, she had to join the fight for the right of succession. She had to move to another palace. Leona saw Case dazed again off to the side, and it seemed that whenever he saw Leona, he would blush, unable to withstand her adorable appearance. This puzzled Leona, and she appeared unhappy. The servants noticed Leona's dejected expression. They brought a toy to try and amuse Leona. But Leona thought, how could a dignified witch play with such a trivial thing? Suddenly, a servant brought out a worn-out rabbit. It instantly caught Leona's attention. Leona sensed the rabbit emanating dark spiritual energy. Delighted, she hugged it tightly, thinking the dark energy might be useful to her. After playing for a while, Leona fell asleep, clutching the rabbit doll. Case then asked the servant about the rabbit's origins. The servant explained. The rabbit doll had belonged to the princess, Leona's mother. He added that if the princess could see Leona now, she would be overjoyed. Case realized that Leona's mother had passed away. He and the servant looked at the sleeping Leona, feeling sorry for her. So young, yet already embroiled in a succession struggle. The next day, the servant and Case took Leona to her new residence, the Black Rose Palace. Legend had it that the ghosts of deceased royals haunted the Black Rose Palace. Case immediately felt uneasy about the emperor's arrangement. Such a young child wouldn't be safe there. But the servant revealed that he had requested the emperor to place Leona there. It had been Leona's mother's last wish. Knowing this, Case reluctantly agreed. But as they approached the gloomy palace entrance, a young boy who looked remarkably like the emperor suddenly appeared. If you have a cute face, you can soften the hearts of those who want to eliminate you. Even the brother who wanted to kill her became a doting older sibling to the not even 1-year-old girl. The baby girl, possessing the soul of a witch, resisted her father's magical probe right after birth. The emperor immediately granted her a personal guard and entered her into the succession struggle. But this meant Leona's life or death now depended on how her other siblings fought against her. This forced Leona, who could have lived peacefully in the opulent palace until she was 5, to move to the designated palace. The servant and Case brought Leona to the eerie Black Rose Palace. Suddenly, Leona stopped and stared. The gloomy palace ahead was enveloped in dark spiritual energy, and it emanated the same dark energy as the rabbit doll. Leona was thrilled and ran to get a closer look. But the closer they got to the palace, the stronger the dark energy became. Suddenly, a magical gust of wind sent the 3 of them tumbling. Then, a young boy who looked exactly like the emperor appeared before them. Upon seeing him, Leona bared her teeth and yelled at him, telling him to get lost. But the boy couldn't understand what baby Leona was saying. He thought to himself that if this little thing were any older, he could take her down in a second. Suddenly, the boy looked closely at Leona and wondered if she was the 12th princess, the one the emperor and Herrick were so concerned about. A few days prior, Herrick, the aide, had confronted the emperor, questioning him about the rumors of dark magic being instilled in Leona. The emperor denied any involvement, claiming he wouldn't harm his own child. He added that after Leona chose her guard, her life or death was no longer his concern. It depended on how the other princes and princesses fought against her. But Herrick, upon hearing this, expressed his reluctance to see the adorable Leona involved in such a brutal succession struggle. The emperor then told Herrick that he was granting the Black Rose Palace to Leona. Herrick's heart sank. He knew the Black Rose Palace still bore the bloodstains of the previous crown prince, who had killed all the royals who had renounced their claim to the throne there. It was also a remote location, making Leona vulnerable to assassination. But the emperor believed this was Leona's destiny. Herrick, finding the emperor cruel, broke with him completely, vowing to protect Leona himself. This made the emperor realize Leona was not to be underestimated. She had the support of Psychic and an aide, 2 powerful allies. Meanwhile, the young boy overheard everything and decided to go to the Black Rose Palace to see what Leona was made of. If she was weak, he would eliminate her. But upon seeing Leona, finding Leona as cute as a bunny, Case lost all murderous intent and instead felt an unusual fondness for her. Case immediately recognized the boy as the fourth prince, Mikhail. He felt, however, that the fourth prince posed a threat to Leona. The fourth prince denied threatening anyone. He saw the adorable Leona holding a dirty rabbit doll, instantly transforming into a doting older brother figure. He offered to give her a new doll as a gift. A servant explained that the doll was left by Leona's mother before she died. Upon learning this, the fourth prince felt pity for Leona's circumstances. Leona tilted her head innocently, unaware of what was happening. The next moment, the fourth prince bestowed upon her a precious gift, the sun god's blessing. He then turned to leave, promising to visit Leona again. Leona already sensed that the sun god's blessing would promote growth and be of great help to her. However, she didn't like the fourth prince, and so Leona lived in the Black Rose Palace for 3 years. She had grown into a beautiful royal princess, her limbs and speech becoming more agile. Unexpectedly, danger lurked even within the royal family. A masked assassin appeared outside Leona's window. This cute little princess was quite playful, treating the assassin like a toy. Having lived in the Black Rose Palace for 3 years, Leona gradually adapted to her guard Case and the daily companionship of the servants. However, danger was ever present within the royal family. One day, Leona woke up and discovered a masked assassin outside her window. He lingered outside, but Leona knew the masked man couldn't enter. Case had already set up barriers around the house. Leona was alone in the room. Case and the servant were outside, discussing Leona's dream from that morning. Leona had told the servant about a strange dream where many people died, and she was the only survivor. Upon hearing this, the servant's expression changed drastically. He went outside and began to scold Case. He told Case not to casually summon wraiths in front of Leona, as it would give her nightmares. Meanwhile, the masked man outside saw this as an opportunity to strike. Unexpectedly, Leona went to the window herself. Seeing this, the masked man thought she was practically asking for it. Leona and the masked man locked eyes. She casually asked him, "Are you very strong?" The assassin figured such a small girl couldn't possibly be a threat. He thought he could easily eliminate her in the blink of an eye. Leona said then, "Excuse me." The next second, she extended her small hand and unleashed ice magic at the masked man. Before he could react, his entire lower body was frozen in place. Leona looked at her hand and remarked, "If I had my original power, I could have finished him off right now." She then unleashed purple lightning magic. The masked man instantly felt a pain like 100,000 volts. He suffered a heavy blow, but Leona, as if playing a game, used healing magic to restore him. One moment he was full of life, the next he was near death. She was treating the assassin like a toy. Leona wanted to make sure he didn't die too quickly. The masked man's eyes widened as if he foresaw her next move. Suddenly, purple magic illuminated the entire sky. The masked man met his end. At noon, Leona wanted to enjoy a pleasant nap. Unexpectedly, the fourth prince came to visit her again. During these 3 years in the Black Rose Palace, the fourth prince visited Leona almost every day. Each time, he would pinch her cheeks playfully. This time, he disturbed her sleep, and she was in a particularly bad mood. She slapped his hand away. She complained that he came and went as he pleased without any real purpose. Suddenly, the fourth prince declared his love for Leona. Upon hearing this, Case immediately chimed in, saying that he loved Leona. The fourth prince then reiterated his love for her. The two began to argue about who loved Leona more. But Leona was. That brought back to a painful memory from years ago. The 5-year-old girl before her eyes that had injected herself with monster blood for the sake of her beloved and escaped reality, living alone for 300 years. Leona, who had become a witch, was caught in a succession struggle and was confined to the Black Rose Palace for 3 years. During this time, her brother, the fourth Prince Mikhail, visited her every day. And every time he came, he had to pinch her little cheeks. But on this day, the fourth prince was arguing with his guard Case. That because both claimed to be the only one who loved Leona. Seeing them argue over their love for her, that reminded Leona of a heart-wrenching experience from many years ago. 300 years ago, Leona lived in the slums. That a 5-year-old child without parents. A wandering alchemist found her. And gave her a small piece of bread and some milk. From then on, the orphan Leona began to follow him. Thus, Leona followed this man every day, experiencing an unprecedented sense of fortune for the first time. Suddenly, one day, the man stroked Leona's head and told her he loved her. This made Leona instantly fall into the warm embrace of love. They went to the place where the man lived, but upon entering, Leona was stunned by the scene before her. Inside, all sorts of little girls were imprisoned. It turned out that the man had always wanted to inject magical power into human bodies to create deadly weapons. But the man failed again and again, until he met Leona. The man thought her eyes and raven hair were special. He was certain she possessed infinite magical power. He kept enticing Leona to become his test subject. But Leona, fearing abandonment, endured the repeated injections of monster blood into her body. Even as her body festered, she desperately persevered. But the experiment ultimately failed. Leona endured such torment, only to be cruelly abandoned by the man. This dealt her a devastating blow. But after an unknown amount of time, Leona found herself waking up in ruins, remembering nothing. It turned out that during her lost memory, the experiment had succeeded. Leona had become the witch the man had spoken of. The ruins before her were the result of her own destruction. Understanding this, she felt she could no longer trust anyone's words. From then on, she secluded herself in the mountains for 300 years. Thinking of this, Leona's mood darkened. She warned both Mikal and Case never to speak of their love for her again. Hearing this, the fourth prince and Case got hid to the side and whispered amongst themselves. They speculated that perhaps Leona's aversion stemmed from her mother's early death. The fourth prince then came over, stroked Leona's face, and promised her that even if he ascended the throne, he would never kill her. He would protect her always. Case also promised to protect her forever. But Leona, upon hearing this, declared she would never trust anyone's words again. Suddenly, Leona sensed an unusual disturbance in the air. The fourth prince and Case instantly cast magic towards the window. A cloaked assassin in a black hat collapsed inside. The fourth prince stared at the corpse, feeling that the magic he'd just released wasn't enough to kill him. How could he be dead? The aide, Harriet, suddenly appeared behind them, confidently claiming he had killed the assassin. They were immediately puzzled, as the Emperor's aide thought, how did he have time to come to Leona's place? Seeing him, Case immediately wanted Harriet to leave. Our little Leona has been threatened by you. But upon seeing Leona, Harriet was overwhelmed by her adorable appearance, excitedly stammering. After a moment, it became clear he was there to inform the fourth prince that the second prince was holding a birthday banquet the day after tomorrow for the soldiers' festival. Everyone who received an invitation was required to attend. Hearing this, the fourth prince asked Leona if she would be going too. Harriet said that Leona wasn't on the invitation list. At this moment, Leona saw the fourth prince, Mikal's, expression darken and grab his hand. She exclaimed that she also wanted to go to the birthday party to meet her siblings. But Mikal thought the second prince was crazy. He was determined not to let Leona go. Harriet also said that the gathering was dangerous and unsuitable for her. But Leona thought that to defeat the enemy, she must first understand them. Besides, she had Case, Mikal, and Harriet's protection. It was a good opportunity to understand her enemies. Even if she encountered danger, she wouldn't be easily killed. No matter how dangerous this gathering was, Leona decided she had to go. That unlucky girl had done something wrong and was caught red-handed, and even her own father didn't recognize her. The 12th imperial princess, reborn as a witch, Leona, learned that the second prince's birthday banquet was in 2 days and insisted on attending. She wanted to understand her siblings' strengths, but her guard, Case, and her brother, Mikal, disagreed, because this banquet was unusual and would be very dangerous. This made Leona, who wanted to win the right of succession, even more determined to go. The next day, Leona used magic to put Case into a deep sleep. She ran out of the palace alone, wanting to sneak out. After leaving, she looked left and right, confirming no one was around. Leona lifted off the ground, using flight magic. But as soon as she flew, she felt a little nauseous, lamenting her weak human body. A foal can walk on its own soon after birth, but she was already 3 years old and still unsteady on her feet. Thinking of this, Leona casually wiped her nose, and the snot stretched out like a long noodle. This frail body worried Leona, but there was no other way. Case's magically induced sleep only lasted an hour. She had to arrive at the second prince's birthday banquet before he woke up. After flying only a short distance, Leona arrived in front of a palace and realized she was lost. Leona hadn't looked at a map before leaving and didn't know which way to go. There was no one around. After walking blindly forward a few steps, she discovered a strange pattern on the ground made of small pebbles. Leona recognized it at a glance. It was a self-portrait of her father in his dragon form. But Leona didn't like him, because in her past life as a witch, Leona had destroyed her father's merchant fleet transporting valuable goods. Her father had chased her for a long time because of this. From then on, they became mortal enemies. In this life, Leona was unexpectedly reborn as his daughter. So Leona decided to rearrange the pebbles to depict him as a bad dragon being beaten. As she approached, she realized the area was surrounded by a barrier. Leona recognized that the barrier was set up by a level 4 or higher mage. Touching it would trigger an alarm. But Leona smiled mischievously, thinking this wouldn't be difficult for her. With a flick of her wrist, she cast a spell and undid it in no time. After entering, Leona picked up the pebbles and started messing around. But just after she had placed a few, a figure appeared behind her and asked what she was doing. Leona casually replied that she was making a picture of a bad dragon being beaten. Looking up, she saw that it was the bad dragon, her father, who had arrived. This startled Leona, who had a guilty conscience, and she didn't know what to do. At this moment, her father was only 0.01 meters away from Leona. In the next second, Leona started laughing nervously, awkwardly greeting her father. But her father didn't speak, just kept looking at her. This made Leona's heart pound. She remembered the first time she met her father. He also stared at her. Later, she was injected with something. Leona thought, could he be planning to do something to her again? Suddenly, someone behind her shouted, "Your Majesty." Leona saw that it was Harriet, the aide. She immediately put on a happy expression and waved to him. But Harriet was startled to see Leona. "Shouldn't your highness be in the Black Rose Palace? Why are you here?" In case, her guard wasn't with her either. Leona told Harriet that she had snuck out to attend the second prince's birthday banquet. After hearing this, Harriet immediately wanted to find someone to send Leona back, disagreeing with her attending the second prince's birthday banquet. Suddenly, the emperor, standing nearby, pointed at Leona and asked Harriet who this little one was. Leona was shocked. Her newly reborn father didn't recognize his own daughter. Harriet informed His Majesty that this was the 12th imperial princess, his daughter, the one previously sent for appraisal. But His Majesty said he had absolutely no recollection of her. This nearly made Leona break down. He didn't even recognize his own daughter. But after looking at Leona's distinctive red eyes, His Majesty finally remembered and said her name. Hearing this, Leona felt that even her father's voice carried a chilling sharpness, and she felt he was even more powerful than when she first met him. The 300-year-old witch actually wanted a hug from her father, and she refused to move until she got one. The witch, the 12th imperial princess Leona, on her way to sneak into the second prince's birthday banquet, unexpectedly ran into His Majesty the Emperor. But His Majesty didn't recognize her, which instantly devastated Leona. Her own father didn't know her. Looking at Leona's unique red eyes, His Majesty finally remembered her and called her name. Hearing this, Leona felt a terrifying sharpness in her father's voice. She wondered if it was a warning to behave. But Leona knew that was impossible, so she put on a cute facade, forcing a smile and saying that her father finally remembered her. But her father remained completely unmoved. This made Leona, awkwardly standing there, stiffen up, her heart starting to pound. She remembered being chased by His Majesty in her past life, and it felt eerily similar to the present situation. Fortunately, Harriet noticed Leona's predicament and prompted her to call out to her father. But Leona, still slightly upset that her father hadn't recognized her, started to say father but changed it to daddy. Harriet nearly had a heart attack upon hearing this. Hearing this, her father still maintained his indifferent expression. Leona then acted coquettishly, begging her father to take her to the banquet. But her father refused outright and turned to leave with his aide, Harriet. Leona didn't give up and started running after them. Suddenly, Leona tripped over a small stone and fell flat on her face. She scraped her knee and, looking pitiful, picked herself up. Seeing this, Harriet immediately ran over, wanting to take Leona to see a doctor. But Leona refused, still insistent on going to the banquet. Suddenly, her father turned around and asked Leona if her leg hurt. Leona wondered if her father was showing concern. Perhaps if she said it didn't hurt, he would appreciate her toughness. So she told her father that her servants had taught her to only say something hurts when it's truly painful. This seemed to pique her father's interest. He lifted Leona up with one hand, and, after looking her over, asked how she got past the barrier in front of the cobblestones. Leona's face flushed with embarrassment as her mind raced. She feigned innocence. "What's a barrier?" Her father clarified, "The barrier by the stone path." Leona insisted she didn't know anything about a barrier. Her father looked suspicious. With a slight smile, he put Leona down, seemingly having caught her lie. He agreed to let Leona go to the birthday banquet, but Leona grabbed his clothes. She said her leg hurt and she wanted to be carried. Her father glared at her. Leona held out her small hands, waiting to be picked up. Seeing the emperor unmoved, Herod tried to pick Leona up himself, but she refused to let him. She even insisted she wouldn't leave unless she was carried. This made Herod wonder if Leona longed for her father's embrace. However, Leona continued to hold up her little hands, waiting to be picked up, her little legs starting to tremble. His Majesty finally picked Leona up. Held in his arms, Leona felt a surge of happiness. Herod, standing nearby, smiled with relief. Meanwhile, a group of servants were meticulously preparing the second prince's birthday banquet. The servants were terrified of the second prince, afraid of overlooking even the smallest detail on the dining table. They feared being killed by the second prince. Suddenly, the second prince appeared and noticed a slightly crooked fork. He immediately began berating the servants. "Didn't I tell you to arrange everything neatly?" The terrified servants quickly explained that it might have been the wind and immediately rearranged the setting. With murderous intent in his eyes, the second prince told the servants, "Your mouths aren't for making excuses." Suddenly, the fourth prince, Mikhail, stepped in to defend the servants. "Today is my brother's birthday. It's a happy occasion, so let's not have any bloodshed." He then tried to dismiss the servants, but the second prince called the servants back, indicating the matter wasn't over. One of them trembled with fear. Sparks flew between the two princes. Then Mikhail said to the second prince, "His Majesty doesn't want to see a bloody mess." The second prince glared fiercely. After a moment of hesitation, he finally relented and let the servants go. The next second, both of them unleashed their spiritual power, intending to finish each other off right there. Suddenly, a voice rang out from afar. "His Majesty the Emperor arrives." They were both astonished to see His Majesty holding little Leona in his arms. How cold-blooded this father was. His own children were fighting before his eyes, and he didn't even blink. And upon seeing his sister favored by their father, the older brother immediately sent assassins, successfully carrying out his revenge. On the way to the second prince's birthday banquet, Leona suddenly sensed something unusual in the air. She realized it might be the fighting coming from the banquet hall. She thought that if one of them was Mikhail, then the other was likely the second prince. Leona had already heard that the second prince, like his Majesty, possessed rare ice magic. Leona couldn't wait to see the second prince's fighting prowess. Suddenly, Herod covered Leona's little face with his hand, warning her little children shouldn't watch such violent scenes. It's best to avoid them. His Majesty also insisted that Leona not turn to look. This made Leona think they were overly worried about her. Her own power was far greater than theirs. Arriving at the banquet hall, Mikhail ran over nervously and asked, "Why is Leona in your Majesty's arms? Could it be that father intends to kill her himself?" Hearing this, Herod burst into laughter. Mikhail looked puzzled, wondering if he had asked the wrong question. His Majesty didn't answer Mikhail's question. The second prince directly invited His Majesty to take a seat. Looking at Leona in his arms, His Majesty decided it was time to put her down. But Leona wondered how she was supposed to get down from so high if he didn't let go. His Majesty, believing he should treat all his children equally, simply dropped Leona. Leona gave her father a look as if to say, "Couldn't you have put me down gently?" However, facing her siblings at the banquet, Leona put on a coquettish expression and said, "I don't want to be separated from Daddy. Hold me again next time." His Majesty poked her little cheek. Everyone was stunned by this scene, but the second prince was puzzled by this. Why would his father indulge and pamper this little girl? What was so special about her? He instantly felt murderous towards Leona. He decided that today, right here, he would end his father's favoritism towards her. He recalled that his father never interfered in the fight for succession. Even if his own children died before his eyes, he wouldn't blink. However, the second prince had made special preparations for today's birthday banquet. He didn't need Leona. Soon everyone was seated. Leona picked up a fork from the table and began to examine it carefully. She wondered if it was made of silver. If she sold it, it would surely fetch a good price. She tapped on the table. The second prince, seeing this, believed Leona had discovered the poison already applied to the fork, which would drain her magical power upon contact. The fork had already turned black, but Leona hadn't noticed. Convinced that Leona was aware of the poison, the second prince watched as Leona, feeling hungry, reached for an apple on the table. The apple slipped from her hand. The second prince, enraged, jumped to his feet and slammed the table, shouting that even the poisoned apple had been discovered. He then whistled, and several powerful masked assassins appeared behind him. They began to fight with the siblings attending the banquet. The ruthless second prince thought that if he eliminated Leona, his father's favorite, he might gain his father's favor. favor. He ordered his assassins to kill Leona first. His Majesty, however, had already sensed the ambush. He stood and scooped Leona into his arms. He told the second prince that Leona didn't have her sword and therefore couldn't participate in the fight for succession. The second prince was startled. He had forgotten the rule that those who hadn't come of age and didn't have their guards with them couldn't participate. Upon learning this, Leona suddenly thought of Mikal. Mikal was pinned down by assassins. Leona wanted her father to help him, but his Majesty remained indifferent, not even blinking. Herod, standing nearby, said that no one could interfere in the fight for succession. Leona pointed out that her father had just saved her. Herod explained that it was because she didn't have her guard with her. Leona argued that Mikal didn't have his guard either. She turned to look at a nearby body. Mikal's guard was already dead. Mikal unleashed his ultimate sun god magic, intending to perish along with the second. The second prince aimed countless magic swords at him. Suddenly, Leona unleashed a powerful red magic fireball. The blast knocked both of them to the ground, instantly killing the surrounding assassins. Everyone was stunned, staring at Leona. Leona had considered Mikal a key person to cultivate for her future power base. She couldn't let him die now. She had intended to use a level 1 spell to cover his escape, but accidentally used a level 3 spell. Everyone stared at Leona, who was now embarrassed. There was no explanation. The little girl was too powerful. She had merely patted her brother's head, but he'd wet his pants. At the second prince's treacherous birthday banquet, Leona's use of magic to help Mikal exposed her magical abilities. The next day, back in her palace, a boy suddenly appeared, calling Leona's name. Leona didn't hear him. The boy thought she was ignoring him. He walked up and slapped her on the head, then mocked her. She's just like the second prince. And she used a level 3 spell. A 3-year-old brat. What other magic can she use? I'm a mage, and I can't even use a level 3 spell yet. He grabbed Leona's shoulder, fuming. He thought that if he killed Leona now, Leona realized she was the strongest mage in the entire royal family. She turned around coldly, wanted to see who was so bold as to hit a noble lady. In the next second, Leona raised her hand and unleashed a purple magic spell at the boy. The boy cried out in pain and struggled, falling onto the ground. After the attack, Leona snapped her fingers, telling the boy never to bother her again. The boy, looking Fuchi unconvinced, thought Leona was too arrogant. He then used his spiritual power to release magical flames, intending to burn Leona alive. However, Leona didn't take him seriously. With a flick of her wrist, she released a faint spiritual power that instantly neutralized the boy's magic. The boy was stunned. He had never seen magic used like that. Leona then decided to show him what real magic was. Suddenly, an overwhelming display of fire magic appeared behind Leona, aimed directly at her. The boy, terrified, fell to the ground and wet himself. Seeing this, Leona decided it wasn't worth bothering with a child. Suddenly, she sensed her father's spiritual power approaching. In the next second, Leona slapped herself hard across the face. Then, she hugged her suddenly appearing father and pointed at the boy, crying, "Daddy, he hit me." Looking at her father with a pitiful expression, His Majesty tried to piece together what had happened. The boy on the ground was the 8th prince. His Majesty already knew the 8th prince was quite powerful. This made him suspicious of Leona. Why was she hiding her strength? Was she trying to gain his attention? He suddenly remembered Herod telling him that Leona longed for her father's love. Thinking of this, His Majesty picked Leona up and began to scold the 8th prince. He admonished him for breaking the rules by fighting without his guards present. Unexpectedly, Leona, in his arms, said, "Wrongdoing must be punished. How can you just let him off with a few words?" His Majesty smiled gently and decided to confine the 8th prince to his palace for a week. The 8th prince felt it was unfair that he was being punished when he was the one who had been bullied. However, he couldn't argue with his father. His Majesty then carried Leona to another palace where a sinister-looking man was waiting. The man made eye contact with Leona and told His Majesty about her abilities, suggesting she would be a suitable apprentice. Before Leona could speak, she and her father were frozen in place. Everything around them was stopped by the man. He began to question Leona's identity. Leona replied that she was Leona. Who else could she be? The man, touching her hand, asked, "Are you 300 years old or 3?" Leona was startled. Even her own father didn't know her true identity. Who was this man? This sinister man didn't even seem to respect the powerful dragon emperor, and he wanted to be the teacher of a 300-year-old witch. Because Leona had revealed her magic at the birthday banquet, His Majesty ordered Herod to find Juros, known as the Western Moda Lord, to test Leona's magic. But when the Moda Lord saw Leona, he immediately saw through her. Her soul was unusual, merely inhabiting Leona's body. Leona wondered who this person really was. In the next second, the Moto Lord, Jiros, used time-stopping magic, freezing his majesty and Herod in place. He then told Leona that if she joined forces with him, he could make her the strongest in the royal family. Leona remained silent. Then she grabbed the Motu Lord's hand. This action led the Motu Lord to believe Leona had made a wise choice. But unexpectedly, Leona released a spark of electric magic onto the Moto Lord's hand, instantly shocking him and causing a wisp of smoke to rise. Leona then released a powerful aura, completely shattering the time barrier the Moto Lord had just created. However, after this display of power, Leona's small body couldn't handle the strain of using such a powerful aura. She began to writhe in pain in her father's arms. With the time-stopping magic dispelled, her father and Herod immediately regained their movement. His Majesty, radiating intense anger, demanded to know what the Moto Lord had done to Leona. The Moto Lord denied everything, urging His Majesty to calm down, lest Leona perish. It turned out that His Majesty's anger hadn't intimidated the Moto Lord, but was instead suffocating Leona. Seeing this, His Majesty withdrew his aura. The Moto Lord then told His Majesty that Leona's magic control was a bit weak, and that he was very willing to help her. Leona immediately refused. She told her father she didn't like the man, and that she had her guard Case if she needed help. But the Moto Lord threatened Leona, saying that if she refused him, he would reveal the secret of her soul to His Majesty. Leona, seeing no other option, agreed to his demands. Thus, Leona yielded to his intentions, and the Motu Lord became her teacher. The next day, back in her palace, Leona pondered the Motu Lord's identity on the balcony. Suddenly, the Motu Lord appeared silently behind her. Startled, Leona asked him his purpose. The Motu Lord said he only wanted to know Leona's true identity. Leona refused to tell him. Suddenly, Case rushed from inside, his eyes fierce, and immediately attacked the Motu Lord with spirit swordsmanship. The Motu Lord dodged Case's attack with a flash and caught the short sword. He then threatened Case, saying he wouldn't hold back if Case attacked again. Leona intervened, declaring that she could kill the Motu Lord even without Case's help. The Motu Lord chuckled, finding Leona's boldness amusing despite her small stature. He said that even if she didn't like him now, there would be plenty of opportunities to meet again. With that, he turned and left. After he was gone, Case asked about the Motu Lord's identity. Leona told Case that he was a teacher her father had found for her. Case looked incredulous, telling Leona that the Motu Lord was more powerful than His Majesty. He told Leona the man's name was Jiros. He had single-handedly wiped out tens of thousands of enemy soldiers in the Battle of the Halio Plains. Leona finally understood why the Motu Lord didn't seem to respect her father and could casually use time-stopping magic. Case suddenly vowed to Leona that the next time he saw the Motu Lord, he would kill him. This 3-year-old girl had actually beaten up her 12-year-old brother. And after beating him up, she even demanded the return of her crayfish. At the birthday banquet, because Leona had stopped the fight for the right of succession, she inadvertently saved the second prince from being stabbed in the heart. To express his gratitude, the second prince immediately made an ice sculpture out of the assassin's arm and gave it to Leona as a gift. Leona, however, couldn't accept such a bizarre present. He rejected him outright. However, after returning, the 8th prince sent Leona all sorts of bizarre things every day. This started to give Leona a headache. On this day, the 8th prince came again to deliver cookies to Leona. The guard Case directly turned him away at the door. At this time, Leona was troubled by her magic training. She recalled that if Lakis hadn't betrayed her in her past life, her soul wouldn't be attached to this petite body. Immediately, she firmly resolved to eliminate Lakis within 10 years. But Leona felt that with her 5-star spiritual power, her body hadn't fully developed yet. She needed to find a way to quickly increase her spiritual power. Suddenly, Leona saw the 8th prince being turned away at the door. A clever idea struck her. The 8th prince was a magician. Perhaps she could use him to practice and improve her spiritual power. So, Leona went to the door and told the 8th prince that he had come at just the right time. She invited him to spar with her. But the 8th prince said he wasn't there to fight. He simply wanted to deliver a luxurious afternoon tea to Leona. He also told Leona that this would be the last time he would bring her a gift, as he would be leaving soon. Leona was puzzled. Why was it the last time? The 8th prince told Leona that he was already 12 years old. According to royal regulations, those who reached 12 years of age had to leave the palace for training. Just like the first prince, Roderick, he would go north to participate in the demonic affairs war. Upon hearing this, Leona finally understood why she had never seen the first prince. Leona insisted on fighting with the eighth prince. She told him that her guard was also present, so he could fight without worry. However, the eighth prince thought Leona was a weak 3-year-old. He didn't want to bully his younger sister. Leona then started to provoke the eighth prince, asking what would happen if she won. The eighth prince said he would grant Leona a wish. Just like that, Leona's provocation was successful. The two arrived at the dueling arena. Initially, the eighth prince still wanted to go easy on the frail Leona. Unexpectedly, Leona dashed towards the eighth prince and used distortion magic, cutting his arm. The eighth prince stepped back in surprise, feeling that he had underestimated Leona. Leona then unleashed the magic spell Earth-Shattering Strike. Instantly, the ground of the arena cracked open, and stones flew towards the eighth prince. At this moment, the eighth prince released ice spears as a counterattack. Leona immediately cast a flame spell. It collided with the eighth prince's magic spears, causing a huge explosion. The eighth prince couldn't dodge in time and was burned by the magical flames produced by the explosion. The eighth prince felt his stamina draining and wanted to use mist magic as cover. He cast ice magic beneath his feet, trying to freeze Leona's feet. But all of this was completely blocked by the magic wall of fire released by Leona. With a leap, she dodged everything. The eighth prince was now losing his fighting spirit. Leona flew into the air triumphantly and told the eighth prince that he had lost to her. The eighth prince looked at his hands, covered in burns from the magic, and vaguely felt that he had no chance of winning. How could Leona use such powerful magic? Then Leona flew down and snapped her fingers. She directly ordered the eighth prince to be her subordinate. The eighth prince was startled. How could he be his younger sister's subordinate? Leona stated that the loser had to become the winner's subordinate. The eighth prince, after hearing this, felt it was indeed reasonable. Since his sister hadn't killed him, becoming her subordinate was only natural. After Leona accepted the eighth prince as her subordinate, she immediately assigned him a task. She drew a pattern on the ground and told the eighth prince to go to the place it depicted. The eighth prince didn't recognize it at first, but after careful consideration, he realized it was the Corel royal palace. It turned out that Leona wanted the eighth prince to gather intelligence on the king of that country. The eighth prince pondered for a moment. To actually claim Leona is using others to do her dirty work. Just how charming is this little girl? To be able to make everyone who comes into contact with her like her. Leona, who defeated her older brother in the duel, immediately took the eighth prince as her subordinate and assigned him a task. She ordered the eighth prince to go to the Corel kingdom to gather intelligence. But after some thought, the eighth prince suddenly felt that Leona was just as cold-blooded as the other imperial siblings. He thought she wanted to use him to kill the king of Corel, and after that, he would die there too. After this analysis, he felt that Leona was using him as a tool. Hearing this, Leona was speechless, wondering why the eighth prince thought she was so sinister. It was simply a matter of investigating the king. She clearly told the eighth prince that she must kill the king herself. At this point, the puzzled eighth prince started to ask Leona why she was so interested in the king. Leona didn't answer him. Instead, she began to reprimand him. Subordinates should obey her orders and not ask so many questions. If he was unwilling, he could fight her again. The eighth prince knew the task wasn't meant to send him to his death. He felt that Leona was surprisingly magnanimous, actually treating him, a loser, as one of her own. With a sincere look, the eighth prince declared he would complete the mission perfectly. The next day, at the birthday banquet, the injured fourth prince, bored from recuperating at home, remembered that Leona had saved him and wanted to go thank her properly. But just then, the eighth prince suddenly blasted open the barrier of the fourth prince's palace with magic and rushed in to boast, telling the fourth prince that he had become Leona's subordinate. However, the fourth prince didn't understand the situation. The Leona he had been thinking about hadn't come. But this show-off, the eighth prince had arrived first. Instantly, he and the fourth prince began a fight. Meanwhile, the modal lord, bored in the palace, complained about being tired of killing monsters. His mages weren't very useful either. He wanted to find something interesting to do. Suddenly, he thought of Leona. He felt that Leona was exceptionally talented, possessing both extraordinary aptitude and a special soul. Unlike other dragon girls, her soul wasn't just attached to someone else's body for amusement, and she gave off a particularly gloomy aura. The more he thought about it, the more he liked her. Just then, he heard storytelling outside, but it was the king of Corel who entered. Meanwhile, Leona wanted to go to the library to investigate how long ago her soul had died. On the way, Leona noticed that Case was either avoiding her or averting his gaze. This prompted Leona to ask Case directly if something was wrong. Case stammered, unable to speak clearly. He just felt that with the eighth prince as a subordinate, Leona wouldn't need him anymore. Leona, however, told Case that subordinates were her slaves, useless things. Case was different. He was family, her protector. She would protect him when necessary. This made Case overjoyed. He felt like he truly belonged to Leona. In a library, Leona found a history book and discovered that 5 years had passed since her previous death. Leona pondered these 5 years carefully. Lakis, the king of Corel who had betrayed her, must have grown stronger. It seemed her revenge plan needed adjustments. It turned out that the 8th prince, her minor subordinate, the 4th prince, and her personal guard, Case, were all already part of Leona's influence. All this closeness to Leona was part of her scheme. Only His Majesty, who was difficult to approach, and the Modu Lord, that charming man, were not yet part of Leona's plan. As she thought this, the Moda Lord suddenly appeared behind her. Leona immediately unleashed her magic, binding his neck. Because Leona smelled Lakis's scent on the Moda Lord. Who would believe it? A 200-year-old man that would act as a doting older brother to a 3-year-old. Leona, plotting revenge in the library, that was startled by the sudden appearance of the Modu Lord behind her and fell from the tall ladder. Seeing this, the Modo Lord swiftly caught the small Leona. But Leona, with a look of displeasure, told the Modo Lord to take his dirty hands off her and to stop appearing out of nowhere. The Modo Lord thought he had just saved her and wondered why she was so ungrateful. Suddenly, Leona smelled the scent of Lakis, the man who betrayed her, on the Modo Lord. In an instant, she used a magic chain to bind the Modo Lord's neck tightly and angrily asked him if he had touched a dog before coming. The Moda Lord didn't understand what was happening, but Leona had already recalled that the sword that pierced her heart. It was the wind sword of Lakis, the very prince who swore he loved her, and the unforgettable scent on that sword. That was exactly the same as the one on the Moda Lord. This brought Leona back to her senses. She realized that she had acted rashly and released her magic too impulsively. She needed a reasonable excuse to cover up her actions. Unexpectedly, the Modu Lord admitted his fault first. He told Leona that he had encountered an adorable puppy on the way and couldn't resist playing with it for a while. He said he didn't know Leona was allergic to dog fur and that he could change into clothes without dog fur right away. Hearing this, Leona took the opportunity to make the Modu Lord change his clothes, complaining about him coming to see her covered in dog fur. While speaking, she pretended to sneeze. Seeing this, the experienced Moda Lord instantly cast a transformation spell. In an instant, his clothes changed from those of a charming gentleman to those of a white prince. Leona was immediately intrigued. She wanted the Modo Lord to teach her the transformation magic, but the Modo Lord said that he couldn't easily teach her such a stylish skill. This made Leona call him a piece of trash. But the Moda Lord wasn't angry. He seemed to enjoy Leona's insults. Suddenly, he asked about the book Leona was reading. He noticed it was about the Corel Kingdom. Leona took the opportunity to inquire about the kingdom. The Moda Lord said he hadn't been there, but had only met someone from the kingdom. The person the Moda Lord met before coming was Lakis, the man who betrayed Leona. Leona, already having a vague understanding of the situation, feigned curiosity and continued to question the Modi Lord about whom he had met. This questioning made the Modu Lord feel that Leona's curiosity about the Corel Kingdom was suspicious. He started to ask Leona why she was so curious about the Corel Kingdom. Leona stammered, trying to cover up, saying that she was going to be the emperor and had to understand other countries first. The Modo Lord argued that she could study other countries as well, so why was she only interested in the Corel Kingdom? Leona replied that the Corel Kingdom's rapid development in such a short time must be due to some hidden secret. The Modo Lord, standing beside her, didn't respond to Leona's words. He was contemplating which country's power struggle it would be better to support. Knowing this, Leona grabbed the Modo Lord's face and yelled that he had to choose her or he would die. The Modo Lord thought that Leona, at the young age of 3, didn't have much financial power to support a nation's power struggles, which required a lot of money. Leona burst into laughter and told the Modo Lord that she had more money than she knew what to do with. The Modo Lord thought Leona was boasting, but in the next second, Leona waved her small hand. And instantly, a shower of gold coins rained down, piling up at the Modo Lord's feet. The Modo Lord was dumbfounded. He picked up a coin and waited. He immediately threw off his cloak and knelt on the ground. Facing Leona, who was standing on the ladder, radiating a golden light. He asked Leona if she would accept a 200-year-old man like himself. Only after sitting down did he declare he would give his all. At this moment, Leona revealed a rather wicked expression. This 3-year-old little girl Dot had completely wrapped this 200-year-old man around her finger, and even made this old man offer his life for her. Unable to resist the allure of gold coins, the Moto Lord obediently became Leona's subordinate. Leona, wanting the Moto Lord to demonstrate his loyalty, immediately asked him to swear an oath with all his magic power, a mage's life force. But the Moto Lord knew that magic power was a mage's lifeblood. Even if he was greedy for money, he couldn't casually joke about his life. So Leona haughtily folded her arms and decided to double the gold reward. Hearing the doubled amount, the Moto Lord, whose face changed faster than the turn of a page, immediately asked Leona to tell him the content of the oath. Leona demanded that the Moto Lord not reveal the secret of the dragon bloodline's soul attachment, not to anyone else. The Moto Lord readily agreed. The second condition was that before Leona became emperor, the Moto Lord could not leave her sight and had to be on call at any time. Hearing this, the Moto Lord's expression instantly transformed into that of a lovesick puppy. This perfectly aligned with his desire to see Leona every day. However, the third request was for the Moto Lord to continue maintaining the pretense of an alliance with the king of Corel. Hearing this, the Moto Lord became reluctant. He felt that with his status as the Moto Lord, how could he stoop to being a spy? Leona immediately decided to add more money. The Moto Lord's face did a 180-degree turn. Deciding that his status as Moto Lord meant nothing, he happily agreed to Leona's request. Then, the Moto Lord inquired about the oath's duration. Leona intended to set the duration until she reached adulthood at 18. The Moto Lord scoffed. That would be a lifelong commitment. This made him immediately agree to all the requests. The next second, a purple contractual magic began to emanate from the Moto Lord's palm. The magic floated towards the back of Leona's hand, leaving a black magic mark. Just like that, the Moto Lord fulfilled his promise to Leona. Leona, striking while the iron was hot, immediately asked the Moto Lord about the current movements of the Corel Kingdom. The Moto Lord told her that the Corel Kingdom currently only had some interest in the southern mountains. They posed no threat to Leona's Hashi's empire. Leona pondered this, and suddenly remembered that the southern mountains were the territory of the witch from her previous life. Leona became agitated, and told the Moto Lord that there was a very powerful witch in the south. The Moto Lord thought it was normal to have a witch. Moreover, he knew that the Corel Kingdom had previously proclaimed that the witch had been killed by their king. This angered Leona. She remembered the betrayal of that heartless man and resolved to become emperor and to personally kill Lakis, the king of the Corel Kingdom. Thinking of this, Leona revealed a wicked expression, and asked the Moto Lord if their agreement was already in effect and irreversible. The Moto Lord confirmed that since the contract was formed, it was binding. But Leona suddenly revealed that these dealings weren't hers. Before the Moto Lord could react, thus she explained that the gold actually belonged to her father. If the Moto Lord kept it for himself, that her father would certainly not spare him. This maneuver filled the Moto Lord with despair. Leona, however, said she would compensate him monthly. The Moto Lord's heart sank. He wanted to continue negotiating, but Leona suddenly activated a distortion blink spell and vanished from the library. The Moto Lord realized he'd been tricked by a 3-year-old and was furious. The next day, Leona's older brother, the fourth prince, he even wants to become Leona's subordinate. Just how powerful is this little girl? Even her father and teacher are afraid of her. Because the Moto Lord pledged loyalty to Leona, he was tempted by Leona with gold. They signed a magic contract. However, the gold given to the Moto Lord was unusable. This left the Moto Lord thoroughly tricked. The triumphant Leona then used magic to leave the library, leaving the Moto Lord alone in the library, fuming and gnashing his teeth. He felt that as a magician, he only had one chance to make a magic contract, and he used it on this little girl, Leona. If other magicians knew, they would surely laugh at him for the rest of his life. He couldn't help but sigh that it was all the fault of money. But looking at the gold in his hand, the Moto Lord felt that Leona was quite amazing. Why did she have so much money from the Hashi's empire? Perhaps Leona, in her past life, had some connection to Eskina, the king of the Hashi's empire. Just as he thought this, Harriet, the aide, suddenly appeared behind him and asked why the Moto Lord was there. Was he trying to get close to Leona for some purpose? The Moto Lord casually mentioned that he felt Leona had research value. Unexpectedly, the emperor, who suddenly appeared behind them, overheard this. Seeing the emperor, the Moto Lord was startled. He hadn't sensed the emperor's magical presence at all. However, the emperor urged the Moto Lord to continue on the topic of research value. The Moto Lord said that continuing would require a little compensation. Seeing this, the emperor immediately decided to give the Moto Lord a large sum of spirit gems. The Moto Lord, predictably greedy, happily agreed. Then the Moto Lord suddenly remembered the zero-profit contract he signed with Leona. He couldn't tell anyone about the secret of Leona's soul. So, the Moto Lord began to fabricate a story that Leona might be a descendant of dragons. This shocked both the emperor and Herod. Herod knew that, according to rumors, there hadn't been a dragon descendant for 300 years. Even the emperor wasn't a dragon. It seemed impossible for one to appear in Leona. But the Moto Lord said he hadn't confirmed it yet. He only knew that Leona, at such a young age, possessed a 5-star level of mana. Hearing all this, the emperor wondered if the Moto Lord had some ulterior motive. Why would he reveal such important information to him? The Moto Lord, with an embarrassed look, explained that he was now Leona's teacher, and that he and the emperor were in the same boat. The emperor then warned the Moto Lord against allying with those from the Corel kingdom. Clearly, the emperor already knew about the Moto Lord's meeting with Lacus. The Moto Lord, embarrassed, explained that he was just in it for the money. But the emperor still believed the Moto Lord was colluding with other countries, posing a threat to his empire. Before he could finish, both of them unleashed powerful mana, preparing to fight. Instantly, the library was filled with a heavy, killing intent. Suddenly, Herod interrupted them. After all, the library was a place that Princess Leona particularly liked. If they damaged it, neither of them would be able to explain themselves. The two looked at each other and considered this, then gradually withdrew their mana. But the emperor still warned the Moto Lord that if he did anything to threaten the empire, he wouldn't spare him. The Moto Lord grinned and said he would certainly avoid that. The emperor then turned and left with a fierce look. But then the Moto Lord shouted at the emperor, "If you're disrespectful to the princess's teacher again, you'll regret it." Just what kind of charm does this little girl have that even her brother becomes her subordinate? And he's even her bodyguard at any time. Ever since the fourth prince learned that the second prince had become Leona's subordinate, it seemed he could smell the fourth prince's jealousy through the screen. The next day, the fourth prince sought out Leona, wanting to know why she had taken the second prince as her subordinate. Unfortunately, Leona was sleeping soundly. Disturbed by the fourth prince's arrival, she appeared sleepy and unwilling to deal with him. The fourth prince warned Leona that the second prince didn't actually like her and harbored murderous intentions. But Leona said the second prince had given up hope, and that's why he became her subordinate. The fourth prince felt that even though his abilities were inferior to the second prince's, he could also become Leona's follower. And he promised he would never betray Leona. Even if he became emperor, he wouldn't harm her. This made Leona look at the fourth prince and wonder if he would kill her to seize the right of inheritance, leaving a question mark in her heart. However, the fourth prince still insisted on becoming Leona's follower. Helpless, Leona agreed to his request. The fourth prince, instantly overcome with emotion, hugged Leona. Leona patted his head, thinking it seemed strange now. But all of this was already part of Leona's plan. The next day, when the fourth prince went out, he saw the second prince hiding outside the palace, looking at something. He went over and saw the corpses of rabbits scattered on the ground. And the eighth prince was scolding the servants. The fourth prince immediately understood. Only Leona was as cute as a rabbit. The eighth prince was taking his anger out on Leona using the rabbits. It turned out the eighth prince still hadn't forgotten the incident where Leona used her spiritual power to bully him into wetting his pants. The eighth prince was still there, threatening to kill her that night. Hearing this, the second and fourth princes immediately decided to act as Leona's bodyguards that night. When the eighth prince went to ambush Leona that night, he had just arrived at the entrance of Leona's palace when the second and fourth princes suddenly appeared. They thought the eighth prince was quite bold to dare to cause trouble for their elder brother. Then, following a scream, the eighth prince's sneak attack failed, and he returned to his palace. He was still cursing under his breath, thinking that the fourth and second princes had attacked him so ruthlessly for Leona's sake. Unexpectedly, a servant suddenly informed the eighth prince that he had received a letter from the first prince, with whom he had a very close relationship. The eighth prince immediately snatched the letter. Meanwhile, the first prince was in a palace outside the empire, gazing at the moon, his eyes seemingly filled with ruthless killing intent. Meanwhile, in a mysterious cave, a white dragon with red eyes slowly opened its eyes, awakening within the cave. This is the most bizarre little girl I've ever seen. With a 3-year-old's body, she had already lived for 300 years. However, this condition of her body had troubled her for a long time. After such a long time, when would her body finally grow up? So, Leona, the 12th imperial princess, began to confide in the servant beside her. The servant comforted Leona, telling her not to worry about her small body, as there were many people protecting her. But Leona felt that the people around her weren't as strong as she was. But on closer inspection, she realized that everyone around her was indeed very kind to her, friendly, except she hadn't yet interacted with the first prince and the 6th imperial princess among her siblings, so she still needed to be cautious in the future. Thinking of this, an assassin suddenly appeared in the room. This made Leona panic. Previously, due to the Moda Lord squandering too many gold coins and using magic, Leona's body was exhausted. The assassin came at the worst possible time, just when Leona was drained. At this moment, Leona closed her eyes, waiting for a miracle to happen. Unexpectedly, the assassin stopped moving. Leona opened her eyes and saw that her servant had already killed the assassin with a sword. The servant, however, remained unusually calm, even blaming himself for accidentally getting the assassin's blood on his clothes. Leona was instantly shocked by the scene. How could even a servant kill an assassin with a sword? She hadn't noticed his strength at all. So, after getting out of bed, Leona started muttering to herself on the way, pondering the true identity of the servant who had always attended her. However, the servant seemed to have read Leona's mind, telling her not to be puzzled by his actions. He explained that he was formerly a solid Special Forces soldier. Upon hearing this, Leona suddenly remembered her past life, ruling the empire with King Lakis of the Karel Kingdom. They had fought a fierce battle with the Elan Duchy. At the time, the Elan Duchy's forces were composed entirely of solid Special Forces soldiers. Knowing the strength of the Elan Duchy, Leona had strongly advised Lakis against confronting them. But Lakis insisted on waging war and nearly lost his life. Unable to bear the thought of him dying, Leona used magic to appear just in time and save him. The servant then told Leona that he had been a guard for her mother, the princess of the Elan Duchy. The war had caused the Elan Duchy to fall, forcing them to seek help from the Hashi's empire and agree to a peace treaty. The Elan princess was the condition for peace. She came to the Hashi's empire and gave birth to Leona, and her guard followed, becoming Leona's servant. Now understanding the situation, Leona began to regret her actions in her past life. If she hadn't saved that heartless Lakis, her servant and mother wouldn't have ended up in this situation and wouldn't have died. Seeing her distress, the servant asked Leona if she was missing her mother. He told her that a delegation from the Elan Duchy would visit the Hashi's empire for her 5th birthday, and she would see the Duke of Elan then. Leona was startled. Wasn't the Duke of Elan the very king she had wanted to destroy in her previous life? He might discover her true identity as a witch. Just how busy is this little girl? Her tutor is easily manipulated by her. Her brothers are at her beck and call, and her cold-blooded father has become a doting dad. Leona, the 12th imperial princess of the Hashi's empire, learning from her servant that her grandfather would visit her for her 5th birthday, she suddenly became worried, because in her past life, Leona, the witch, had been a fierce general, attacking her grandfather's empire. She was afraid he would recognize her. Suddenly anxious, Leona ran into her father. Unexpectedly, upon seeing Leona, her father used levitation magic to lift her into his arms. Leona was puzzled. Her father, who wouldn't bat an eye if his children died before him, was being so affectionate today. What surprised Leona even more was that her father claimed she was tired and wanted a hug. Leona was dumbfounded. She hadn't wanted a hug at all. Her father had picked her up. Faced with her cold-blooded father's sudden affection, Leona played along, thanking him for the hug. Then she saw her tutor, the Moda Lord, and wondered why he was there. The Moda Lord told Leona that a divine power would come to bless her today. Leona said she had never heard of such a thing. Her father then told her that he had heard Leona was a descendant of dragons and had specifically sought out the divine power to examine her. Leona was bewildered. Who had told him that? but an aide whispered to Leona that it was her tutor, the Moto Lord, who had told him. This made Leona glare furiously at the Moto Lord. She believed he had broken the promise he made in their magic contract. The Moto Lord, his face panicked, insisted he hadn't. It turned out the Moto Lord hadn't actually told her father the secret of Leona's soul inhabiting another body. Instead, when faced with her father, he explained the use of the elven gem. He fabricated a story about Leona's unusually strong spiritual power, suggesting she might be a descendant of dragons. Because of this, her father decided to summon the divine craftsman. He wanted to test whether Leona had dragon blood. Leona immediately praised the Moto Lord enthusiastically for his brilliant work. Leona realized she could use this supposed dragon ancestry to hide her witch's soul. This way, she wouldn't have to worry about her grandfather discovering the truth. So, Leona began proclaiming she possessed the power of a dragon. Seeing this, her father became even more eager to verify the truth. The Moto Lord thought Leona's diversionary tactic was excellent. He used telepathy to compliment her. But Leona gave him a disgusted look, scolding him for daring to use telepathy on her. Thinking about it, Leona found it strange that she had been born with 5-star spiritual sensitivity. Leona reasoned that she could just have the divine craftsman examine her. Suddenly, her brother, the second prince, came to bid farewell to their father. The second prince had come of age and was going on an expedition for training, but their father remained silent, saying nothing. Leona thought her father was being cold. His son was leaving, and he didn't even offer a farewell. Blinking her large, innocent eyes, Leona asked her father why he didn't wish her brother a safe journey. Looking at Leona in his arms, her father fell silent. The surrounding aides and servants thought Leona's question was rather bold, considering her father's coldness. However, unexpectedly, the next moment, her father actually told the second prince to have a safe journey. The second prince was stunned. His usually stern father had actually offered him a farewell because of his little sister, Leona. He then declared he would faithfully carry out the task Leona had assigned him. Previously, after defeating the second prince and making him her little bunny knight, Leona had assigned him a training mission. He was to go to the Corel Kingdom and investigate King Lacus. Leona reminded him to complete the mission. Unexpectedly, the second prince looked jealous. He wanted Leona to pat his head. He told Leona that she had patted the fourth prince's head before, and he wanted the same. Leona was exasperated. She couldn't believe they were competing over head pats. She then patted the second prince's head. The second prince beamed, looking sweeter than if he had eaten candy. After saying goodbye, he left in a carriage. However, her father, holding Leona, now looked at her strangely. This made Leona uneasy. She wondered if he was displeased with her. How kind this little girl was. She actually tried to persuade her cold-blooded father, who wanted to kill his own children, to show mercy. And she had learned a lesson herself. Leona, a reincarnated witch, was unexpectedly portrayed as a dragon descendant by her tutor, the Moto Lord. This successfully disguised Leona's true identity as a witch. But possessing 5-star spiritual power felt unnatural. Leona felt it was too extraordinary. She decided to seek the divine craftsman's blessing and have her body examined. But on the way, she witnessed her father's coldness towards the second prince. Leona asked her father why he couldn't treat the second prince the same way he treated her. Her father replied that he loved her because she was strong. But Leona argued that the second prince wasn't weak. She had only defeated him and made him her little piggy knight. Her father then questioned why she hadn't killed him after defeating him. After hearing this, Leona wore a puzzled expression, saying that the second prince was her brother and family. So how could she kill him? However, as soon as she said this, Leona seemed to realize she had misspoken. The surrounding people also fell silent, because their father had once eliminated 37 of his siblings to seize the right of inheritance. Only the one who survived to the end could become the emperor. However, Leona never wanted to kill again. It turned out that in her previous life, at the age of 5, she was tricked by a strange man into becoming a vessel for a witch. Many innocent little girls were captured and used as experimental subjects for Leona's witch, ultimately dying before her eyes. She never wanted to experience those painful memories again. Thinking of this, her father told Leona that, at the time, he hadn't actually wanted to kill his siblings. But sparing their lives was a wasted effort, only earning him their ruthless betrayal. So, her father warned Leona never to show mercy, otherwise, she would be the one stabbed in the back. Leona, after careful consideration, agreed. She stated that she wasn't so weak. Even if betrayed, her strength was considerable. Hearing this, her father affectionately stroked Leona's small head. Then they entered the palace and saw the divine priest, who had been waiting for a long time. He immediately decided to begin the blessing ceremony for Leona. But the divine priest thought to himself, doubting how this little girl, Leona, could possibly be a descendant of the dragon clan. Thus, as the divine priest emitted spiritual power, transmitting it to Leona's small palm, unexpectedly, after a while, the divine priest discovered that the power was being continuously absorbed by Leona. This frightened the divine priest, who declared he had never seen such a thing. At this moment, Leona suddenly felt pain and immediately cursed the divine priest, asking if he wanted to die. The surrounding people were incredibly embarrassed. Leona, realizing she had just cursed, immediately apologized. However, her father found this strange, wondering why she felt pain. The divine priest also expressed uncertainty and wanted to test again, promising not to hurt the imperial princess. So, he placed Leona's small hand in his again and released his spiritual power. This time, the divine priest was certain. He told her father that Leona didn't need to wait for her powers to bloom like other royals. Her power was already fully manifested. He added that he couldn't even estimate the strength of Leona's spiritual power, declaring that Leona possessed a dragon's body. He'd never seen such a cute little girl get so angry about not being able to cultivate properly that she kicked her bed. If her younger brother was bullied, she'd immediately put on the airs of an older sibling. After being identified by the divine priest as having true dragon blood, Leona spent all day in the palace, trying to awaken the 5-star spiritual power within her body. Her guard, Case, watched her curiously from the side. Suddenly, Leona clenched her fists angrily, and in the next second, she kicked the bed hard. She started berating herself for being useless. Case wanted to ask Leona what was wrong. Leona started stammering, trying to cover it up, saying she was just a little frustrated and that he shouldn't worry. It turned out Leona didn't want him to know she was trying to awaken her spiritual power. But Leona also felt useless. Even knowing she had dragon blood, she couldn't activate her 5-star potential. She sighed, thinking it was too difficult. She told Case she wanted to become stronger, but no matter what she did, it didn't work. Case, however, thought she was only 3 years old and already very strong. But Leona felt this was just a drop in the bucket. She wanted to quickly become more powerful, her heart hardening with determination. She declared that only by becoming stronger could she quickly eliminate the Heartbreaker, Lakis, and dominate the entire continent. Thinking of this, Leona realized she hadn't seen her servant all morning. Case told her the servant was in another room. So, Leona pushed the door open and happily jumped into her servant's arms. The servant asked, puzzled, why she was up so early. Leona, putting on a cute act, said she was a descendant of the dragon clan, so of course, she would wake up early. Then, seeing a table full of gifts, Leona wanted to know where they came from. But the servant told Leona they were from prominent noble families, delivered early that morning. Apparently, they had heard about the dragon clan descendant. They all wanted to curry favor with Leona. Now aware of the truth, Leona casually remarked that it was like they were trying to bribe her. Upon hearing this, the servant immediately asked where she had learned the word bribe. Leona, realizing she had misspoken again, quickly blamed her advisor, saying she learned it from him. The servant, however, thought, what kind of words is that advisor teaching her? I'll have to have a talk with him someday. Meanwhile, Leona wanted to pick out a few decent gifts, but after looking around, she couldn't find any. At this time, the servant peeked at Leona, wanting to request to organize Leona's birthday party in the future. Leona hesitated, thinking carefully. She felt her current influence was still too weak. She thought this could be a chance to gradually assess the strength of the prominent noble families. So, she agreed to the servant's request. Leona wanted to ask Case's opinion on this. Case thought it was a good idea, but mentioned that the crazy first prince would be returning soon. This made Leona suspicious. Just how powerful was the first prince that everyone seemed to fear him? Just then, the fourth prince burst in, excitedly greeting Leona. He told Leona that she was a big celebrity now, the news of the Dragon Clan descendants spreading like wildfire. Leona listened with a proud expression. However, the fourth prince told Leona not to forget about her little brother now, that she was a Dragon Clan descendant. But Leona firmly forbade the fourth prince from mentioning little brother again. She said that the second prince had become a jealous mess the last time he saw her, and even demanded head pats. Speaking of which, Leona wanted to ask the fourth prince about the first prince. But the fourth prince thought he was a madman and insisted that Leona not meet him. This made Leona even more curious. So, the fourth prince told Leona that the first prince never showed mercy to the weak. He even almost got killed by the first prince once. Leona asked again if he was beaten. The fourth prince told Leona that the first prince could have killed him outright, but instead locked him up like a rat, a real demon. Even now, just thinking about it made him disgusted. Unexpectedly, Leona put on a grim expression, thinking the first prince didn't want to live, daring to bully her little brother, and completely disregarding her as the older sibling. The fourth prince was dumbfounded by Leona's reaction, but Leona turned and scolded him, saying she would help him become stronger. From now on, the fourth prince would be the one to beat up the first prince. This little girl is so fierce. While diligently cultivating, she was unexpectedly assassinated by her own brother. And after seeing she hadn't died, he immediately made a private vow with her. After Leona, reincarnated with the witch's soul, was born, her father summoned the divine priest to examine her due to her unusually strong spiritual power. Unexpectedly, the examination revealed her to be a descendant of the dragon clan, making Leona a celebrity among the prominent noble families. They all sent gifts to congratulate her. But Leona, through the fourth prince who came to congratulate her, learned that he had been bullied by the first prince before and resolved to make the fourth prince stronger and defeat the first prince. So, she took him to the training grounds. But the fourth prince thought the first prince was the son of his great uncle, and their strength wasn't on the same level. Leona argued that the fourth prince was the emperor's son. The emperor had defeated his uncle, so how could his uncle's son be stronger than the emperor's son? These words undoubtedly stung the fourth prince, but he still kept shrinking back. Seeing this, Leona quickly used magic, immediately wanting to start his training. But after seeing the magic in Leona's hand, the fourth prince was so scared he turned and ran. Leona thought the fourth prince was too useless, shrinking back before even trying. Thinking about this, Leona wanted to try transferring the spiritual power from her witch soul to her current dragon clan body. Leona then felt a hidden energy within her body. She suddenly remembered that in her previous life as a witch, she had used this hidden power to fight against the powerful Eskina. At that time, the old dragon saw through Feng Hai's identity at a glance. But Leona still didn't understand what kind of power this Red Sea truly was. Just then, a black magic sword suddenly pierced through Leona's shoulder. Leona instantly collapsed to the ground, unaware of who had launched the sneak attack. Unexpectedly, it was the eighth prince who appeared, accompanied by an assassin. The eighth prince gloated, warning Leona to keep a low profile if she wanted to live a few more years. He then ordered the assassin to finish her off. The assassin snapped their fingers. A surge of black magic was launched towards Leona's chest. Unable to block the attack, Leona was forced to her knees. It turned out that her earlier cultivation was incomplete, and Leona's spiritual power was now raging within her body, preventing her from dodging. The assassin then released a black magic sphere, aiming it directly at Leona. This time, Leona managed to block the attack with a magic shield using one hand, but she was severely injured, blood trickling from the corner of her mouth. Leona now understood. She was no match for the assassin. She hoped for the arrival of the fourth prince and her guard, Case, but they were nowhere to be seen. So, Leona decided to unleash the hidden power within her. She grabbed the Red Sea. Suddenly, dark red fire magic enveloped her entire body. The eighth prince and the assassin were stunned, witnessing the terrifying spiritual power emanating from Leona. In the next second, both of them collapsed at Leona's feet. Leona was puzzled. How could they fall before she even made a move? A voice then greeted Leona. Leona looked closely. It was the first prince, the one the fourth prince had always feared. At the same time, the divine priest's pen suddenly snapped while he was writing. He seemed to have sensed the first prince's return and felt a sense of foreboding, wanting to find Leona. But Leona was already severely injured internally. Facing the powerful first prince, she felt she couldn't handle him alone. Unexpectedly, Leona started cursing at the first prince, asking him why he had suddenly appeared to cause trouble. The first prince, however, stated that he liked her outspoken nature. He then threatened Leona, saying he could kill her at any moment. Leona believed that as long as Case arrived, the first prince would be finished. The first prince burst out laughing, thinking Leona was naive to rely on a mere guard to save her. Just then, behind the first prince, Case and the fourth prince were kneeling on the ground. Leona was dumbfounded. It turned out that Case and the fourth prince had already been subdued by the first prince and were on the verge of being killed. The first prince had also known about the eighth prince's assassination attempt. He considered it a miracle that Leona had survived until now. He declared that Leona's abilities were worthy of him. He had been waiting for that person. Leona was even more confused, unsure what the first prince was talking about. But the first prince clearly told her not to worry, saying that he could wait until she was older. He wanted to marry Leona. This older brother is too intense, wanted to make a marriage pact with his 3-year-old sister. And if his sister didn't agree, he would kill her. Leona, reincarnated with the soul of a witch, was born into the Hashi's empire, where siblings fought for the right of succession. Her body was the only descendant of the dragon clan in the empire. While diligently cultivating her magic, she was assassinated by her own brother, the 8th prince. This caused her body to be possessed by demonic energy and left her severely injured. At the critical moment, she used the hidden power within her, the Red Sea. But just as she was about to fight back, the 8th prince and the assassin before her were defeated in one move by the suddenly appearing first prince. Unexpectedly, the appearance of the first prince left Leona flattered and alarmed. He had taken a liking to the 3-year-old Leona and wanted to marry her. He further stated that the offspring produced from Leona's Dragon Clan bloodline and his own holy light power would possess unparalleled strength, capable of changing the world. Then, with a sincere look, he extended his hand to Leona, inviting her closer. Seeing this expression, Leona was instantly reminded of her past life, when at the age of 5, she was deceived by a strange man and became a vessel for a witch. Later, she met a man she fell in love with at first sight, helped him gain power, and was then cruelly murdered. The first prince's current expression seemed to mirror those deceptive men. Leona saw the 2 men who had betrayed her in his gaze. This time, she vowed not to trust anyone. In an instant, she launched a magic missile at the first prince. Unable to dodge in time, his cheek was grazed and blood trickled down. The first prince now understood Leona's answer. She made it clear she would never agree to the marriage and was determined to kill him right there. With that, she unleashed a powerful fire spell, engulfing the first prince in flames. Leona realized the injuries she sustained from the 8th prince's earlier attack were quite severe. This fight had to end quickly. She intensified the flames, completely consuming the first prince. Unexpectedly, a guard pulled him from the inferno, leaving him hovering in the air. The first prince wore an expression of amusement, as if finding Leona's attempt to kill him naive. Leona cursed from the ground, demanding he come down and fight her. The first prince, however, taunted her, refusing to descend and challenging her to do something about it. Leona had an idea. Even if he wouldn't come down, she could still reach him. She cast an explosive spell, aiming it at the airborne first prince. With a bang, a massive explosion erupted beside him, but the first prince effortlessly deflected it with a light magic shield, admonishing Leona that such childish magic was beneath him. He added that her fiery temper only made him more interested. Leona was shocked. Just how strong was he? He had blocked all her spells. The first prince, seemingly tired of the game, decided to end it. He conjured a massive light sword, aiming it at Leona. He thanked her for the magic show she had put on. Then, the enormous, white-bladed light sword hurtled towards Leona. Seeing it coming, Leona realized she had underestimated him. His power was truly formidable. She began to recall everything that had happened in this life from the moment she was born. It had been a relatively happy life. She prepared to meet her death. Just then, a powerful lightning spell suddenly appeared. It was her father, arriving just in time to intercept the light sword. In her father's arms, Leona looked up at him. Everything felt warm and safe. She clung to his chest, scolding him for taking so long. They had attacked her while she was recovering her magic, and she almost died. Her father gently stroked her cheek, assuring her that with him around, she would never die, because she was his daughter. Hearing him call her that for the first time, Leona nestled against his broad shoulder, asking him to finish off the first prince. The first prince, startled, told their father this was a fight for succession, and he shouldn't interfere. He declared the fight was over, and that he would finish Leona off himself. However, the father, who wouldn't have blinked at the death of his children before, now unleashed a spell at the first prince. Unable to defend himself, the first prince was struck, falling to his knees and coughing up blood. He pleaded with his father, asking why he would do this. But his father simply ordered him to stand down, rebuking him for his arrogance. He mentioned another son who had suffered a similar fate, frozen solid for trying to kill his sister. And when his teacher found out, he had given the boy another beating. Leona, transformed by the witch, born in the Hashi's Empire, where siblings fight and kill for the right of succession. Leona is the Empire's only descendant of the dragon race. While cultivating, she was assassinated by her own brother, the 8th prince. Fighting back, she encountered the first prince's forced marriage proposal. But Leona refused him point blank and engaged in a fight with the first prince. She underestimated the first prince's strength and nearly died. At the critical moment, her father appeared. Leona narrowly escaped death. However, the first prince, facing her father, insisted on killing her. Hearing this, her father found the first prince too arrogant and immediately cast a freezing spell to punish him. The next day, Leona recalled the duel and thought that if her father hadn't appeared in time, she would already be dead at the first prince's hands. She then remembered her father holding her, telling her that as his daughter, she would never die. This made Leona anxious. She felt that if her father knew about her witch soul, he probably wouldn't have saved her and would have killed her instead. So Leona decided to hide her identity from then on. At that moment, her teacher, the Moto Lord, suddenly appeared before her. Leona angrily pretended not to see him. This embarrassed the Moto Lord, who felt that since they hadn't seen each other for a while, it was strange she was ignoring him. Leona questioned the Moto Lord, asking why he hadn't helped her when the first prince almost killed her and what was the point of appearing now. The Modai Lord stammered, saying he had other matters to attend to. Although he wasn't there, he had good news for Leona. But Leona didn't want to hear it. She told the Motu Lord to get lost and never come back. The Moto Lord then revealed the good news. He had just taught the first prince a lesson. Leona immediately asked if he had killed him. The Moto Lord, embarrassed, said he hadn't. It turned out that the first prince, affected by her father's freezing spell, was still frozen stiff and unable to move. He asked his guard when the freezing spell would wear off. The guard informed him it would take 10 days. This made the first prince wonder who Leona really was. Her father had intervened in the succession struggle for her, attacking him. Even his advisor hadn't intervened and seemed to favor Leona. He thought that even though he didn't know why they protected her, she had caused him so much trouble. Even with 2 people protecting her, he would kill Leona in the future. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew. The Moto Lord appeared, telling the first prince he was wrong. It wasn't just 2 people protecting Leona, but him as well. Seeing the Moto Lord, the guard immediately cast a spell, trying to protect the prince. The guard was confused, saying his men were guarding outside. How did the Moto Lord get in? The Moto Lord said such small fry couldn't stop him. Suddenly, more assassins appeared in the room, surrounding the Moto Lord. The Motu Lord instantly unleashed a powerful golden spell, blinding them and making them struggle. He warned the first prince to be careful, or he would die a terrible death. Leona, hearing the Motu Lord standing up for her, felt pleased. She patted the Motu Lord's shoulder, telling him he did a good job and that she would deal with the first prince herself next time. She clenched her fists, determined to kill the first prince. The Moto Lord, seeing Leona, thought she was adorable. He then started a conversation with Leona, asking if she planned to leave the royal family. Leona said she wouldn't leave. She was going to become the emperor. The Moto Lord, having previously made a magical contract with Leona, knew the secret of her soul. He said he would support Leona and help her kill the first prince. But Leona suddenly remembered her dragon descendant body. What if the witch's soul hadn't been reborn into this body? Where did the original soul go? So, Leona decided to investigate what was going on with this body's soul. This 3-year-old girl actually wanted to investigate her own origins through her deceased mother. And after learning the truth, she was shocked. Born the 12th imperial princess of the Hashi's Empire, Leona was originally a 300-year-old witch with powerful magic. However, her soul was attracted by the dragon bloodline, becoming a dragon descendant with a witch's soul within the empire. While focusing on her cultivation, she was attacked by the first prince. In a moment of crisis, her father saved her. That's how she narrowly escaped death. So, after being rescued, Leona held a grudge. She was determined to find an opportunity to kill the first prince. Leona felt that the power of her witch's soul hadn't been fully unleashed. Where did the original soul in her body go? So, she decided to investigate her mother through the servants, to uncover the secret of the original soul. The next day, a servant was feeding Leona. Leona only ate a few bites before pretending to be full. Then she threw herself into the servant's arms, saying she missed her mother. The servant's expression became hesitant. She could only comfort her kindly. Leona seized the opportunity to ask if there were any of her mother's belongings she could keep as a memento. The servant told Leona that the imperial consort's belongings were all kept in the Dandelion Palace. Upon receiving this information, Leona decided to act that night. At night, Leona donned night clothes, disguised herself as a thief, and stealthily prepared to sneak out of her palace. Suddenly, she noticed Case, the guard, standing outside. She suddenly remembered that Case hadn't sought her out since his confrontation with the first prince. She decided to take Case along on this mission. Case, upon seeing Leona, appeared ashamed. He felt useless for not having defeated the first prince. His spirit lion magic was countered by the first prince's holy light power. He couldn't defeat him without defensive equipment. Leona told Case to cheer up. They could just buy the strongest equipment later. Case said that equipment was expensive. Leona thought, how expensive could a piece of equipment be? Case whispered the price in her ear. Leona started to break out in a cold sweat. However, the next second, Leona generously told Case that she wasn't short of money. No matter how expensive, she would buy it for him. She dragged Case along with her to her mother's former residence, the Dandelion Palace. Standing outside, they noticed a powerful magical barrier at the entrance. Case told Leona that he wouldn't go inside. Leona was puzzled. Why not go in together? Case had heard that only royal relatives could enter the barrier. Understanding the reason, Leona pushed open the door with a worried heart. The cold and empty scene inside came into view. Leona felt strange. Why hadn't the barrier stopped her? She took a few steps forward, and the leaves on the table started to turn by themselves. Attracted, Leona went over and discovered it was her mother's diary. With a tanta heart, Leona began to read carefully. The diary began on March 2nd, for 121. Leona's mother learned she was pregnant for the first time. She stroked her belly, wondering how His Majesty would react to the news. However, 27 days later, on March 29th, her mother's stomach began to ache intensely. Her mood became terrible. She couldn't eat anything and even considered giving up the baby. Another 60 days passed. Her mother showed signs of miscarriage. The pain became unbearable. Her condition worsened day by day. She felt ashamed and again considered giving up the child. Reading this, Leona felt heartbroken, empathizing with her mother's pain and the difficult decision she faced. Unexpectedly, Leona continued reading. Gradually, her mother's pain and suffering seemed to lessen. The diary also recorded that her father had once said her mother's adorable appearance resembled a little lion. Because of this, her mother translated the meaning of little lion into the name Leona and wrote it in her diary. Upon seeing this, Leona was stunned, frozen in place. She remembered that her father had named her after she was born. How could her mother's diary contain her name before she was even born? Filled with questions, Leona wondered if something had happened between her father and mother. Completely bewildered, Leona chose to continue reading. Later, when her mother was 5.5 months pregnant, she suddenly felt unbearable pain and fell into a coma for several days. The suffering continued for another month. Then, during the 7th month of her pregnancy, her mother was shocked to discover that the baby had died in her womb. Reading this, Leona's heart ached. She almost couldn't bear to read on. Unexpectedly, in the following entries, Leona found a method to revive the child. A powerful simulator, having lived for 300 years, was moved to tears by a letter, and the contents of the letter filled him with lifelong regret. Leona, with the reincarnated soul of a witch, after being overwhelmingly defeated by the first prince in the training grounds, gradually became curious about the secret of her own soul, so she sought out a servant and learned the location of her mother's belongings. That night, she went to the Dandelion Palace, hoping to uncover the secret of her soul. Unexpectedly, she found her mother's diary. The contents documented her pregnancy. After reading it, she discovered that from the beginning of the pregnancy, the child's condition had been precarious. Her mother suffered from severe morning sickness and was in very poor health. She even considered giving up the child. However, in the 7th month, the child mysteriously died in the womb. Reading this, Leona's heart ached. She seemed to empathize with her mother's suffering during pregnancy and was shocked by the child's stillbirth. Wanting to know the truth, Leona continued reading with a tantara heart. The following entries recorded her mother's constant self-blame. She felt she shouldn't have resented the child in her womb, because of her own discomfort and believed she was responsible for the child's death. In her grief, she accidentally broke the toys she had prepared for Leona. Reading this, Leona felt a sharp pang in her heart. Her nose began to tingle, and her small fists clenched involuntarily. She seemed to relive her mother's yearning for her lost child. Leona decided to read just one more page. Unexpectedly, the next page described how her mother tried to revive the child. Just then, a thick envelope fell from the diary with a thud. Leona immediately picked it up. Inside was a letter from her mother. Her deceased mother had foreseen that Leona would seek her out to investigate the secret of her soul. So she wrote the truth in the letter. Her mother had used her life as a bargaining chip for black magic, placing a witch's soul into the body of her child in the womb. This was how Leona came to possess a witch's soul and be reborn. Reading this, Leona's suspicions about her mother using black magic were confirmed. The letter also revealed that her mother had sensed the suffering of Leona in her past life as a witch, abandoned by her parents and a man. Because of this, the black magic summoned the witch's soul, allowing Leona to have a family in this life. The letter told Leona that she would no longer be alone. It wasn't that she had taken over this body, nor was it that her daughter's body had been lent to her. Stay and be my daughter. Think of yourself as me. Okay, I wasn't a good mother in this life. I hope you can be my daughter in the next life. Then I'll have experience and will love you even more. I really, truly love you, Leona. Seeing this, Leona couldn't hold back any longer. Tears welled up in her eyes. She remembered when, as a witch, she helped the heartless Lakis. It was she who attacked her mother's country. As a condition of peace, her mother came to the Hashi's empire and became an imperial concubine. Now, she had given her life for Leona. Leona felt her mother must resent her. But then, she read that her mother's letter also told her about a handmade garment in the box beside her. Leona was puzzled. What kind of mysterious garment could it be? When she opened it, she found a cloak. Leona picked it up, dusted it off, and said with a look of distaste, "Who would wear something like this?" But then, well, I guess I'll wear it. So she put it on, twirled around a few times, and was surprised to find it fit perfectly. Then, wearing the cloak, Leona went to her room and stood before her mother's portrait. "Mother, you are truly great. You gave your life to save me. I will always cherish you in my heart." She gently touched her mother's portrait and told her, "I will definitely live up to your expectations. I will become even happier." What charm did this little girl possess? She could make everyone around her willing to go through fire and water for her. Leona, the reincarnated witch soul, investigated her mother Ipella's former palace with Case's help. In a diary, she unraveled the long puzzling secret of her body and soul. It turned out that her mother had used black magic to summon her, and Leona, as a witch's soul in her past life, used her own life to give Leona a new life. Meanwhile, Case, the guard standing vigil outside the room, was starting to worry. He wondered why Leona had been inside for so long. Just as Case steeled himself to barge in, Leona, clutching her mother's diary, flung open the door, hitting Case squarely in the forehead. He crumpled to the floor with a thud. Seeing this, Leona rushed over to check on him. She blew on the large bump on his forehead and asked him why he was standing in front of the door. "Didn't you know I almost killed you?" Ignoring the lump on his forehead, Case immediately stood up and gave a thumbs up, indicating he was fine. "I'm all right. I'm not dying." But Case noticed Leona was wearing strange clothes and had been crying. So he asked her about it. Leona stammered, saying it was nothing. She just cried a little. Upon hearing this, Case immediately went into alert mode, drawing his sword. "Where's the assassin?" Leona quickly told him to put his sword away. There was no assassin. She had just read her mother's diary and was moved to tears, and she showed off the cloak, saying it was from her mother. Knowing the truth, Case quickly apologized to Leona, saying he had been too rash. He then asked about the contents of the diary, but Leona knew she couldn't let Case know her witch secret, so she casually said it was just about her mother's love for her. Case then reminded her that the diary should contain some wise words. Leona was puzzled. How did Case know? Case said he had fought against Ipella before and knew her very well. Hearing this, Leona felt a surge of murderous intent. How dare Case hit her mother? However, the next second, completely confused, Leona thought, "I should figure out who hit whom first." She then questioned Case again. It turned out that Leona's mother, Ipella, was a very powerful puppeteer. She had fought Case, the spirit medium, to a draw. Hearing this, Leona fell into deep thought. Could it be that her 5-star powerful mana was because she inherited the special abilities of both her father and mother? Just then, a surge of powerful mana appeared in the air. It was her father appearing before them. He immediately asked what they were doing. Case immediately stepped in front of Leona. However, her father glared angrily at Case. Leona, seeing this, quickly stepped forward and greeted her father. "Papa, it's been a while." But when her father saw Leona, he didn't treat her with his usual tenderness. Instead, he angrily scolded her for being there. Seeing this, Case quickly stepped forward to take the blame for Leona, telling the emperor that he had brought her. But her father was still relentless, wanting to know why Leona had come. Leona, having no other choice, stammered, telling her father she had come to see her mother. Upon hearing this, her father directly warned Leona that if she wandered around freely, the servants and guards would be severely punished. He told Leona to deal with it herself. Leona immediately understood. Her father was worried that she would be attacked by his other children. So she stood in front of her father, shyly asking, "Papa, are you worried about me? Have you ever seen such an awesome, pampered princess?" A 3-year-old little sister forced into an engagement by her older brother. Anyone who hears about it immediately wants to kill the brother. Leona, reborn with a witch's soul, having nearly died at the hands of the first prince in the training grounds. And now, with the 300-year-old soul of a witch in a 3-year-old body, went to her mother's former palace to investigate the secret of her body's original soul. But just as she was about to leave after learning the truth, her father suddenly appeared before them. And upon seeing her, he angrily demanded to know what Leona was doing there. However, after a confrontation, Leona discovered that it was her cold-blooded father who was worried about her being attacked again by the first prince. So, she rushed to her father and asked, "Papa, are you worried about me?" While saying this, she poked her father's leg with her small hand. Her father's furious expression instantly vanished. He admonished her, "Knowing I'm worried, why are you still running around?" But Leona, with her little mouth, tried to smooth things over, saying she was planning to go find him after seeing her mother. But her father was still worried about her injuries from the first prince's attack and advised her not to run around until she was fully healed. Unexpectedly, Leona pointed at her father seriously and said, "Papa, if I stay inside all the time, won't there be rumors in the empire that I lost to the first prince?" Hearing this, her father felt like he had a silly daughter. Why was she so obsessed with becoming emperor, disregarding even her health? Leona, once again, haughtily told her papa, "When I become emperor, I want to see them all kneeling before me." After she finished speaking, the emperor couldn't help but imagine Leona as emperor. She was truly precocious and cunning. However, unexpectedly, Leona seized the opportunity to complain about the first prince, telling her papa that if she didn't become emperor, the first prince would force her into an engagement. Her father's expression instantly changed. An icy killing intent filled the air. Then Leona added that he not only wanted to marry her, but also wanted to force her to have a powerful child with him. Hearing this, Case, the guard, instantly turned and was about to go and eliminate that beast of a first prince. Meanwhile, her father rolled his eyes upon hearing this. The icy magic in the air intensified. Leona instantly shivered from the cold. She quickly tugged on her papa's robe, urging him to stop the ice magic. She was freezing to death. Her father, feeling extremely displeased, thought, "How dare that first prince do this to my precious daughter?" He then asked Leona, "Do you really want to be emperor?" Leona immediately put on a determined look. Teacher said, "I must become emperor." But feeling her small body, she suddenly became melancholic. "When will I grow up?" Seeing her concerns, her father thought, "Leona is so small and weak. I should help her." So he told her to follow him to see something interesting. Leona, however, stood there, coquettishly reaching out for her father to carry her. Meanwhile, Case, rushing away, thought about the first prince's beastly behavior. He could no longer control the magic in his hand, determined to kill the first prince. Suddenly, they ran into the emperor's aide, Herrick. Seeing him rushing by, Herrick felt something must be happening. He immediately followed Case and asked him what was going on, all flustered. "Why are you, a guard, acting alone? Where is Leona?" At that moment, Case, seeing the aide, stopped and thought about asking him to come along for backup. He then told the aide about Leona, saying the first prince wanted to marry her. Hearing this, the aide was instantly enraged and joined the plan to take down the first prince. But then the aide stopped Case, believing the two of them wouldn't be a match for the first prince. Currently, the first prince had a dark sorcerer and the divine priest protecting him. Hearing this, Case felt the aide had a point. He now knew the opposing side's lineup, so he was determined to bring the aide along. He then pointed to his forehead and told the aide I accidentally bumped my head on the door and got a big bump. Leona blew on it for me to make it better. The aide, who couldn't stand Leona's cuteness any longer, immediately fantasized about Leona blowing on his wounds if he were injured. How wonderful that would be. No matter how badly I'm hurt, I must take down the first prince. Thinking this, he immediately urged Case to hurry, saying he wanted to get injured. Let's go take down the first prince. Have you ever seen such a biased father? Just because his daughter couldn't beat her brother, he just gave her equipment. Leona, the reincarnated witch soul, was investigating the gentleman's room in her mother's former palace when she ran into her father. To avoid being scolded for sneaking out, Leona took the opportunity to tell on her brother, the first prince. Unexpectedly, her father immediately signed up and decided to help little Leona. He took her to the treasure vault of a prominent alchemist from the previous royal generation. When her father unsealed the magical barrier at the entrance, countless glittering treasures came into view. Leona was stunned by the sight, her mouth agape, repeatedly saying wow. Her father wanted to know what she saw. Leona immediately told her father, "This is an equipment wonderland. They're all good things, super precious." Hearing this, her father decided to let her choose 3 items, no more, telling her she was the first person to come here. Leona thought her father was stingy and wanted to take more, otherwise she wouldn't have another chance. But her father refused. So, having no choice, Leona rushed into the vault. 3 is fine, 3 is still pretty good. She immediately picked a bracelet that could block holy light magic for Case. Then she chose a ring that allowed for spatial movement, thinking that with this ring, she could fly back to her witch lair anytime. Seeing Leona's choices, her father wondered if it was because of her dragon descendant heritage that she instantly found such practical equipment. A bracelet to protect her guard, and a ring for instant teleportation in emergencies. He then wondered if her third choice would be a magic recovery item, or something explosive against the first prince. Unexpectedly, Leona chose a necklace that could warp space. This puzzled her father. He didn't understand why she would choose such a seemingly useless item, so he asked her about it. But Leona refused to tell him, giggling mischievously and saying he'd find out later. That night, after choosing her equipment, Leona returned to her palace, exhausted and collapsed on her bed. Then, her servant appeared before her with a gloomy expression, asking, "Did you have a good time gallivanting about?" Leona broke out in a cold sweat, stammering, "Are you angry?" She admitted her mistake, saying, "It's my fault. I snuck out again without telling you." Then, her servant launched into a nanny-like lecture, scolding Leona. Leona's health still hasn't fully recovered, and I'm worried sick she'll sneak out again. While Leona was patiently listening to the nagging, a servant suddenly noticed her strange clothes and asked where she got them, saying they'd never seen them before. After a moment of thought, Leona decided to tell the servant the truth. She said she had gone to see her mother. The servant's voice immediately rose with excitement. They couldn't understand why she would go to see her mother, Ipella. Could it be that Leona was feeling lonely in the palace? Leona suddenly threw herself into the servant's arms, explaining that she was just curious because she was born there. Hearing this, the servant began to blame themselves for not doing a good job and making Leona feel lonely. Leona insisted that it wasn't because of loneliness and told the servant not to be sad. The servant held Leona tightly and promised that they would fulfill their duties as a nursemaid and protect Leona. After that, Leona lay down on the bed, feeling like she could finally rest. Suddenly, there was an urgent knock at the door. Leona was furious. At this late hour, who would dare disturb her rest? Unexpectedly, when she opened the door, it was the aide who had been beaten up by the first prince. He immediately started complaining to Leona about being beaten. The aide then collapsed on the floor and asked Leona to help him, claiming he was dying. Leona was confused, unsure what was going on. The next second, Case appeared from behind and stepped squarely on the aide. He then cautiously greeted Leona. Seeing that Case wasn't injured, Leona wondered what had happened. Case dragged the aide out the door, while the aide continued to ask Leona for help. Completely bewildered, Leona watched as Case dragged the aide away, saying they shouldn't disturb the imperial princess's rest. The next day, Leona stretched, wanting to continue reading the diary her mother had left her. She hoped to learn more about her mother's puppeteer, but as she tried to open the diary, she found it covered in a barrier. Leona's temper flared. Was there some kind of viewing restriction magic? She started casting spells to examine it, and was surprised to find a message saying only the strong could read it. What charm did this little girl possess? She had everyone around her completely smitten, and in everyone's eyes, she was a precious treasure. Leona, who had retrieved her mother's diary after investigating the puppeteer, returned to find it covered in a magical seal. Upon inspection, the message "Only the strong can read" appeared. Leona was furious. Why would her mother put such a viewing restriction on it? As she paced back and forth in her room, the Modu Lord appeared in the room using spatial magic. Leona, who had already sensed his presence, immediately demanded he show himself. The Modu Lord appeared, looking shy. He thought Leona was amazing for detecting him when even her guard case hadn't. As expected of my dear Imperial Princess, he said. But Leona, still angry, wasn't having it. She angrily demanded to know why he was there. The Modu Lord, with a sly look, said he was there to train the Imperial Princess. Leona looked blank, seemingly having forgotten about it. Seeing this, the Modu Lord feigned tears, lamenting that he always thought of the Imperial Princess. But now she wasn't welcoming him. Leona then remembered Case saying that the Modu Lord was the mage who had once destroyed half the continent. She thought that if she could get his guidance, she would be one step closer to defeating the first prince. She couldn't help but feel secretly delighted at her good fortune. She turned and pointed at the Modu Lord, asking if he was confident in his ability to train her well. However, the Modu Lord immediately appeared determined, suggesting that Princess Leona simply needed to trust him. The two then proceeded to the training grounds. Meanwhile, Leona's father reflected on his recent actions concerning her, questioning himself. He wondered why he had repeatedly tolerated Leona's unreasonable behavior. Furthermore, he had intervened in the previous succession struggle at the training grounds. Most importantly, just yesterday, he had gifted her valuable magical equipment. The more he thought about it, the more perplexed he became, wondering what spell Leona had cast over him. Just then, the aide, covered in injuries, appeared before His Majesty. Upon seeing him, the aide immediately asked if he looked handsome. His Majesty, seeing him, was puzzled, unsure what the aide had done to end up looking like a mummy. The aide, however, declared these to be glorious battle scars and recounted to His Majesty his and Case's fight against the first prince. He claimed he had done it to defend Leona's honor. His Majesty, however, stated he already knew about the first prince forcing Leona into marriage. Upon hearing this, the aide immediately criticized His Majesty for his inaction. He should have been furious and retaliated against the first prince. Hearing this, His Majesty was reminded of the incident at the training grounds where he had injured the first prince. He felt he was acting just like the aide, constantly preoccupied with Leona. Suddenly, a guard barged in, urgently informing His Majesty that Leona and the Modu Lord had gone to the training grounds. Upon hearing this, His Majesty and the aide immediately decided to go and see what was happening. Meanwhile, at the training grounds, the Modu Lord was preparing to infuse Leona with spiritual energy. Leona, however, was confused, not understanding why the Modu Lord was doing this. The Modu Lord initially thought she knew everything. At this point, Leona's temper flared, and she urged the Modu Lord to stop being cryptic and explain himself. He then began to explain in detail. It turned out that the spiritual energy within the body was different from the spiritual energy within the soul. If Leona forcibly used the spiritual energy from her soul, she could potentially lose control and risk her life again. Hearing this, Leona unexpectedly began to criticize the Modu Lord, complaining that he was a poor teacher and should have explained everything clearly from the beginning. This made the Modu Lord impatient, stating that if it weren't for the princess, he wouldn't bother explaining at all. He then told Leona to prepare herself as he was about to begin the process. As his palm touched Leona's back, golden spiritual energy slowly flowed into Leona's body. Suddenly, Leona's expression changed dramatically, and she collapsed to the ground in immense pain. The Modu Lord was perplexed, wondering why she was experiencing pain. Perhaps she felt unsafe there. He suggested they try a different location. Leona seemed to think of a suitable place and waved for the Modu Lord to come closer, saying she had something to tell him. The next moment, she snatched the Modu Lord's glistening necklace and instantly activated a spatial transfer spell, vanishing before the Modu Lord's eyes. The still confused Modu Lord suddenly found His Majesty standing coldly behind him, furiously demanding to know where the Modu Lord had taken his precious daughter. Have you ever seen a brother like this? Constantly plotting to kill his sister, and even colluding with the sixth princess to kill the witch. Leona, having activated the spatial transfer spell, vanished from the training grounds. This caused everyone to worry about her. The fourth prince, in particular, became distraught, wondering when Leona would return. Suddenly, the first prince appeared before him, startling him so badly he fell back onto the ground. The fourth prince immediately called him a madman and demanded to know how he got in. The first prince, with a look of disdain, remarked that it was hardly difficult to come and go as he pleased. He then proceeded to pat the fourth prince's head condescendingly, reminding him that he was the older brother and should show some respect. The fourth prince, exasperated, thought the first prince was insane and acting nothing like an older brother. In the next moment, he unexpectedly pulled the fourth prince into a hug, whispering in his ear, "Brother loves you." "I don't like the second prince. When he returns, I'll kill him along with Leona." The fourth prince was startled and immediately grabbed the first prince's arm, urging him not to kill Leona. The first prince, enraged, lifted the fourth prince into the air and furiously demanded if he had a death wish, daring to stop him from killing someone. Powerless, the fourth prince could only be held aloft. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the room. The newcomer immediately urged the first prince to stop, advising him not to cause trouble while their father was in a bad mood. The first prince, upon hearing this, dropped the fourth prince. He then approached the figure and realized it was his younger sister, the sixth princess. The sixth princess gave an order, and the two began to catch up. When the conversation turned to the fourth prince on the floor, the sixth princess expressed her desire to meet Leona, wondering what kind of person could captivate the fourth prince so completely. Meanwhile, Leona had used a transfer spell to return to her witch's lair. Upon arrival, she collapsed on the ground, feeling a sense of familiarity with her surroundings. Suddenly, Leona sat up, remembering she wasn't there for nostalgia. She needed to test if the location was suitable for practicing her magic. She immediately began to meditate. With a look of satisfaction, Leona absorbed all the magical energy the Modu Lord had given her. She thought to herself that the Modo Lord was absolutely right. It was indeed the location. Leona then decided to try and activate the hidden power within her soul, the Red Sea. She cautiously reached out her hand. Unexpectedly, instead of the previous outburst, she succeeded. Leona's magical power immediately increased. She continued to practice while she was on a roll. However, after stretching and standing up, Leona realized that after the initial success in touching the Red Sea, she hadn't been able to do it again in the following days. Leona told herself not to be greedy, feeling content with what she had achieved. Suddenly, she realized she had been gone for many days. She began counting the sunrises on her fingers. After counting, Leona was shocked to discover it had been 7 days. She felt doomed, realizing they must be frantic searching for her. Back in her room, Leona tossed and turned, looking at her small treasury on the table. She thought she couldn't bring anything back. Giving them gifts might expose her identity. But then she had an idea. She could give the Modu Lord a pair of earrings made from the tears of a dark elf who never cries. She figured the Modo Lord, with his love for riches, would appreciate them. With that thought, Leona hurriedly cast the transfer spell again. To her surprise, she found herself in a forest. Leona panicked, thinking she was a genius. How could she have miscalculated the transfer? She decided to survey her surroundings. Suddenly, a man appeared behind her. Leona turned around in shock to see Lakis, the man who had killed her. If your ex-boyfriend were standing before you, wouldn't you want to kill him? This 3-year-old girl not only wanted to kill her outright, but also exposed her boyfriend's weakness. Leona, with the soul of a witch, had returned to her lair to cultivate her magic and became so engrossed that she lost track of time and forgot about her family's worry. Leona hastily used spatial transfer magic, but the transfer went awry, landing her in the forest. So, Leona, having no other choice, decided to check her surroundings and figure out where she was. She hadn't taken more than a few steps when a man behind her called out, stopping her in her tracks. Leona turned around and saw Lakis, the heartless man who had killed her in her past life. Leona's heart pounded in her chest. She wondered if she could use her magic flames to incinerate him right then and there. But just then, Lakis reached out to examine Leona's necklace. Suddenly, a gust of wind, seemingly out of nowhere, knocked him off balance. It was the Modo Lord, appearing just in time to shield Leona. He angrily confronted Lakis, demanding to know if he knew who he was touching so casually. Then, turning to Leona, he apologized for his late arrival and expressed his concern for her. "I'm so sorry I'm late, Your Imperial Highness. Are you alright?" Lakis, witnessing this scene, was confused. He couldn't understand why the Moda Lord was there, and he had just addressed the girl as Your Highness. He questioned the Moda Lord, "Is this girl a princess?" The Moda Lord proceeded to reveal Leona's true identity, leaving Lakis bewildered. "A princess? But what's she doing so far out here?" The Moto Lord explained that the princess had gotten lost while taking a walk. Lakis found this even more puzzling. Lost? How could she wander so far? Just then, Leona asked the Motu Lord about the situation back home. He replied, "His Majesty is frantic with worry. He's nearly declared war looking for you." Leona dismissed this, saying, "Father isn't the type to act so rashly." Hearing this, a thought struck Lakis. The Emperor was clearly deeply concerned for this girl. He couldn't let her slip away. He introduced himself. "I am the Emperor of the Corel Kingdom. It's a pleasure to meet you." Leona nearly vomited. How dare he call himself an emperor? Remembering Lakis's vanity, she decided to taunt him. "You're so ugly," she shouted. "Compared to the Moto Lord, you're a monster." "Let's go, Moto Lord," she said. Being around someone this ugly is contagious. The Moto Lord blushed crimson. He quickly cast a teleportation spell and whisked Leona away. Instead of returning to the palace, the Moto Lord took Leona to a different location. "Where are we?" Leona asked. "I brought us here on purpose," the Moto Lord replied. He sensed something unusual between Leona and Lakis. "What's your relationship with him?" Leona was startled. He had noticed. She quickly tried to deflect the question. "There's nothing between us. You're imagining things." The Moto Lord suspected she was lying, but seeing her insistent denial, he decided to drop the subject. He then admitted, "I forgot to punch Lakis." Later that night, back in his palace, Lakis thought about his encounter with Leona in the forest. He was sure he had sensed his own magic when he met her, but then she turned out to be a princess. Something didn't add up. He sensed something bigger at play. He decided to visit the Hashi's empire soon. "That's the most audacious little girl I've ever met. Only 3 years old, and she runs away from home." And after her teacher found her, she easily controlled a witch's soul. Leona, having finished practicing her magic, returned and encountered her betrayer, Lakis. At the critical moment, the Moto Lord appeared and took Leona to a forest. Later, the Moto Lord, recalling the encounter, felt there was something suspicious about Leona's relationship with Lakis. A tense confrontation ensued, but the Moto Lord was ultimately outwitted by the quick-thinking Leona. She immediately wanted to urge him to hurry home, feeling that if they didn't return soon, the Emperor would be frantic. Unexpectedly, after hearing this, Leona calmly brushed it off, thinking she'd need an excuse upon returning. She then asked the Moto Lord if he could take the blame for her leaving, suggesting he say she ran away. But the Moto Lord said even if he had 8 heads, it wouldn't be enough for the Emperor to chop off. Hearing this, Leona thought he was being stingy, unable to help her with such a small matter. Suddenly, the Motu Lord thought of an excuse for her. He told her she could say she accidentally wandered into the Mwasho forest. Leona pondered this. She decided this excuse was perfectly viable. Since magical energy couldn't be sensed near the Mwasho forest, it would explain why her father couldn't find her. She then urged him to go to a village near the Mwasho forest to buy some souvenirs. She wanted to bring something back for Case, but the Moto Lord thought her idea was childish, asking if she thought this was a vacation. Leona glared at him furiously, demanding to know what he had just said and if he wanted to die. The next second, the Moto Lord took out a pair of small shoes. He told Leona to put them on, saying they would go after she did. Leona looked at them with disgust, asking if he was trying to control her now. However, the Moto Lord immediately explained that he wouldn't dare, saying they were just tracking devices to prevent her from getting lost. But Leona stubbornly refused to wear them. The Moto Lord then threatened her, saying that if she didn't wear them and the Emperor asked about what happened outside, he would make up stories. Hearing this, Leona thought the Moto Lord was despicable. She reluctantly put on the tracking devices. But as soon as she did, Leona's demeanor turned murderous. She warned the Motu Lord to be careful, saying he'd be finished when she took them off. Then the two teleported to the village. But upon arriving, Leona was surprised to find that the surrounding villagers didn't seem to notice them. She asked the Moto Lord how he did it, but the Moto Lord refused to tell her. He said he didn't even know her business, so why should he tell her? But Leona argued that he could have just asked, and she would have told him. Hearing this, the Motu Lord relented and asked what she wanted to know. Leona asked if he had a deal with Lakis, but the Moto Lord still refused to answer. Then Leona took out the necklace she had taken from the witch's lair. Seeing it, the Moto Lord was immediately tempted by the treasure. He then started to talk about his past. It turned out the Moto Lord had a very powerful mage for a younger brother. The Moto Lord could never beat him in any test, and this made him feel increasingly inferior. unable to bear his brother being stronger than him. The Moto Lord left home in a fit of anger and cultivated his magic power for 50 years until he finally reached his desired level. He then returned to his brother and proudly took him to fight a monster. But the Moto Lord underestimated the monster's strength, and his brother lost his life. From then on, the Moto Lord fell into despair. Have you ever seen such a family? Everyone except the daughter seems abnormal. The father became a vagrant after his daughter ran away, and the older brother became a murderer. Leona, the reincarnation of the witch's soul, having forgotten the passage of time while cultivating her magic power, went to a nearby village to buy gifts for Case after the Motu Lord found her. Unexpectedly, their presence went unnoticed by the villagers. This led the incredibly curious Leona to pry into the Motu Lord's deepest wounds. It turned out the Moto Lord had a younger brother who was more powerful than him. Jealous, he began to cultivate in solitude. After 500 years, the arrogant Moto Lord decided he was ready. Upon returning, wanted to show off his power to his brother. He took him to fight a monster, which led to his brother's accidental death. This caused the Motu Lord to carry this burden in his heart. Also, due to the accumulation of 500 years of magic. Only after teleporting here were they unnoticed. Hearing this, Leona exclaimed that the Motu Lord was truly a genius. Yet he let his younger brother die over a petty jealousy. She continued to goad him, saying, "You thought you were the strongest mage, but sometimes seeing someone slightly stronger than you made you unhappy, didn't it?" She then advised him that the dead couldn't be brought back to life, and that he should just be more confident in the future. This left the Moto Lord with mixed feelings. He was so startled he took a step back, surprised to find that Princess Leona would actually offer such advice. He truly hadn't expected it. Hearing this, Leona's temper flared. She felt like he wasn't taking her kind words seriously. But then the Moto Lord asked about her relationship with Lakis. Leona clenched her fists. She immediately told him that she had to kill this person. But the Moto Lord, with a worried expression, asked again, "Do you really have to kill Lakis?" Hearing this, Leona sensed something strange in his questioning. She angrily told him, "What I've been through is beyond your imagination, so I must kill him." The Moto Lord's expression changed after hearing this, as if there were things he couldn't tell Leona yet. Suddenly, Herrick, her father's aide, sensed Leona's magic from the palace and chased after her with Case. Upon meeting her, he burst into tears, crying and telling Leona, "You have no idea how much we missed you. Seeing your short arms and legs, chubby little hands, and protruding belly makes us so happy." Hearing this, Leona was instantly disgusted, wondering if they were insulting her or actually missing her. Witnessing this scene, the Moto Lord thought to himself, "Leona, I hope we won't become enemies in the future." Leona returned home and saw her haggard father. Her father's expression was very solemn. Seeing this, Leona quickly waved to her father and greeted him. "Long time no see, Papa." Then she playfully asked, "Is Papa's health okay?" But her father didn't answer. The atmosphere was very strange. Unexpectedly, Leona then asked, "Papa, why did you grow a beard in just a few days?" Her father angrily demanded, "Tell me what happened." Leona scratched her little face unconsciously and lied without blushing, telling her father, "I just set the teleportation coordinates wrong, so I ended up in the Moshog forest and got lost." Unexpectedly, after hearing this, her father picked Leona up and looked her over. He then praised her. "You truly are a genius mage. You fell into the Moshog forest and still managed to come back alive." After saying that, he put her down. He then grounded Leona for a week. Leona immediately stood up and questioned her father, "I didn't do anything. Why are you punishing me?" However, her father insisted that she had made a mistake and must be punished. He then turned and ordered the royal first mage set up a barrier around the palace. No one is allowed to use teleportation magic in the palace. Hearing this, the mage stammered, telling his majesty, "I'm afraid this will lead to our isolation from the outside world. The Empire's trade will likely suffer greatly." However, her father's mind was made up. He ordered them to do as he said immediately. The next day, Leona was confined to her room. She thought to herself that this was all Lakis's fault. As she spoke, her little hand couldn't help but bang on the bed. Suddenly, she recalled what the Moto Lord had said about his younger brother. She felt that he must be hiding something from her about Lakis. Just then, Leona received a letter from Case, sent by the second prince. She was surprised to find that it was actually a box. She wondered if it was a gift. However, after reading the letter, she learned that the second prince had now infiltrated a mercenary group in the Corel kingdom, as per Leona's previous instructions. The letter mentioned that the box contained a gift for Leona. To her surprise, when she opened it, she found the head of the mercenary group's leader. Leona was shocked. She immediately cursed the second prince. "You're insane. Have you ever seen a little girl like this?" At only 3 years old, she's already angered her teacher half to death, and her teacher actually admires her. Leona's soul returned. Due to returning from outside training, she was grounded by her father. This caused her to be confined to her room, restless all day. However, the 7 days passed in a flash. Leona immediately cheered, "Wow, it's finally over." But upon leaving her room, she was a bit at a loss, not knowing where to wander. Just then, she suddenly heard someone call her rabbit. Turning around, she discovered it was the fourth prince, that silly goofball. He excitedly greeted Leona, "It's so great to see you." But Leona furrowed her brow, noticing what looked like the remnants of a beating on his face. So she asked him, "Who kicked your face?" The fourth prince claimed he'd done it accidentally. No sooner had he spoken than Leona placed her hand on his face, releasing a healing spell. This immediately moved the fourth prince to tears. He then turned and wanted to go show off to the aide. Seeing this, Leona thought, "They're all crazy." So she instructed the maids, "When they come back looking for me, don't open the door for them." But then the fourth prince stopped, reminding her, "Wait, I'll be back to give you a lesson later." This made Leona roll her eyes. She thought, "Father's really something. If he doesn't want me running around, he gets someone to lecture me." She figured, since the lesson was inevitable, she might as well mess with him. Then she returned to her room and sat obediently. Unexpectedly, a bald man with a single hair on his head entered. He greeted her, but Leona was completely captivated by the hair on his head. She immediately exclaimed, "Such a shiny bald head. I've never seen anything like it. If a fly landed on it and couldn't grab onto that hair, wouldn't it fall and hurt itself?" This made the sage instantly furious. Miraculously, the single hair was also blown away by his anger. He angrily questioned Leona, "What do you mean? Don't you know a bald head is the symbol of a sage?" Leona simply blinked, saying, "That's the first time I've heard such a bizarre explanation." She then gave him a disdainful look. "I'm only 3 years old. Little kids don't understand anything." Hearing this, the sage felt his heart nearly stop. He resignedly introduced himself. "I'm the strongest sage on the continent, Pop Gun, one of the 4 sages of the Ivory Tower. Even His Majesty should have heard of me." But Leona instantly flew into a rage. She thought, "This old baldy is so narcissistic. I've lived for 300 years, and I've never heard of you." The sage then pulled out 2 books, saying, "I wrote these too. They're quite famous, you see." Leona, after looking at them, retorted, "The royal library is practically my front yard. I've never even heard of these 2. And your name is pretty goofy too." The sage looked horrified. He thought, "These are my masterpieces." Leona continued, "This is all kid stuff. Little girls would fall asleep reading this." Hearing this, the sage pulled out a book of myths from his bag. He began to recount the experiences of an ancient divine doctor. Unexpectedly, Leona could recite it backward and forwards, retelling the contents of the book word for word. The sage was stunned. He thought, a 3-year-old actually knows even myths. Then he thought, she definitely won't know about spatial knowledge. So he took out another book he'd written about space. Unexpectedly, Leona refuted him again. "This kind of space and time stuff hasn't been theoretically proven. What you've written is completely unsubstantiated." Then she blamed her father. "Seriously, finding a charlatan like this to teach me. It's infuriating." Hearing this, the sage actually thought Leona had a point. It hadn't been proven, but the insult to his bald head, he wouldn't let that go. He pulled out another book and slammed it on the table. He declared confidently, "You definitely won't know this one, Leona." Leona looked at the book on the table curiously. She felt like the book was a demonic artifact, but it wasn't a true imitation. She wondered why the old baldy was so confident. The sage declared, "If you can decipher this book, Leona, I'll give up teaching your highness and personally explain the situation to His Majesty, admitting my limited abilities." Hearing this, Leona thought that was too small a wager. She said, "Let's make it more interesting. How about 10,000 gold coins?" This startled the sage. Unexpectedly, the amount was so large. The bald man immediately agreed. What kind of girl is she to make a 200-year-old man bow and call a 3-year-old big sister? Leona, with the soul of a witch reborn, because father arranged for the sage to tutor her at home and eager to escape her family surveillance. Leona took the opportunity to make a bet with the sage under the pretense of deciphering a book. Unexpectedly, the sage agreed immediately, deciding on the spot to forfeit tutoring her if he lost. And he even offered 100 million gold coins. This made her overjoyed. In reality, how could Leona, as a witch, not understand the demon world book the sage had? So she pretended not to understand and went to the royal library with Caius. Upon arrival, she discovered a shortcut at the entrance, so Leona had to go in alone. But as soon as she entered, the smell of the books captivated her. She hummed a tune happily while reading. Suddenly, the Moto Lord appeared at the window. He greeted her with a charming expression, "Your Imperial Highness, long time no see." But Leona, seeing him, was puzzled and questioned what he was doing there. After conversing, she learned that the Moto Lord was also there to read. Leona also told him about the bet with the sage. Instantly, the Moto Lord looked at her with newfound respect, incredulous that someone could even swindle the sage out of his money. But Leona said she was just playing with him, wanting to deflate the bald man's arrogance. However, when the Moto Lord saw the book's appearance, he realized it required mastery of the demon world language to understand. He immediately wanted to reprimand the sage. "Isn't this making things difficult for our imperial princess?" But Leona confidently declared that she was proficient in the demon world language and that this was all child's play. Hearing this, the Moto Lord fell into deep thought. Puzzled that Leona knew the demon world language, he made a bold decision. He immediately bowed 90 degrees. "Big sister, quickly teach me the demon world language." Leona, upon hearing this, was instantly furious. She angrily rebuked him, telling him not to call her big sister, and she stated she wouldn't teach him. "I knew your intentions all along. Don't even dream of saving your brother again." But the Moto Lord also immediately became agitated, accusing Leona of not understanding his pain and telling her not to judge him carelessly. No sooner had he spoken than Leona kicked him in the leg. Tears welled up in his eyes. "Moto Lord, do you think I don't have anyone I want to save?" Perhaps at this moment, the person Leona wanted to save was her mother, Abella. And so, after deciphering it, Leona handed the gist of the book to the sage. But the sage was astonished, incredulous that a 3-year-old child could even decipher a demon world book. Leona shifted her gaze to the Moto Lord, and said that the Moto Lord had taught her. "This doesn't count as cheating, does it? As long as I solved it, it's fine, right?" At this point, the sage reluctantly conceded the bet. But at this moment, Leona remembered the rumors that the sage's knowledge surpassed many scholars. She could ask him if it was truly possible to resurrect the dead. So she ordered him to have her father bring the sage to her. Unexpectedly, hearing this, the bald man looked at Leona with an expression of admiration. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the first prince was making the fourth prince practice magic. The fourth prince was beaten and slumped on the ground. The first prince, seemingly enjoying the torment, wanted to kill the fourth prince right then and there. He then grabbed the fourth prince by the throat, releasing powerful light magic from his hand. At this critical moment, a shout suddenly came from afar. "You're dead." It was Leona releasing a magic fireball, furiously hurtling towards the first prince. How cold-blooded could a father be? His own children were fighting before his eyes, and he was actually smiling radiantly. And when the sixth princess saw her brother being bullied, she immediately wanted to kill the other party. Leona, the reborn witch soul, having noticed an unexplained injury on the fourth prince's face earlier, and worried about her subordinate, sought out the fourth prince again the next day. She found him being choked by the first prince, his life in danger. Leona immediately unleashed a fierce magic fireball. Unexpectedly, the first prince easily dodged it and sneered, saying, "I wondered who it was." "So it's you, little girl." At this moment, Leona realized that the injury on the fourth prince's face was caused by the first prince. Instantly, she used magic to levitate stones into the air and angrily warned the first prince, "You madman, I absolutely won't spare you this time." After speaking, the stones behind her fiercely attacked the first prince. But the first prince showed disdain, telling Leona that although she had become stronger, her magic was all child's play. He then easily shattered the incoming stones with his sword. Leona didn't give up and immediately intensified her magical attack. A deluge of stones instantly engulfed the first prince. She thought he would surely die this time, but a figure flickered within the dust cloud. Unexpectedly, the first prince emerged unscathed. Amidst the dissipating dust, he warned Leona, "Stop using such childish magic, okay?" He then leaped in front of Leona, preparing to counterattack. Unexpectedly, Leona smiled brightly. Touching her spatial magic necklace, a huge magic fireball suddenly appeared behind the first prince. The first prince immediately sensed something was wrong, but it was too late. Unable to dodge, he was instantly knocked to the ground by the fireball. This time, it was Leona's turn to sneer. She told the first prince, "Your attacks are all just little tricks. I saw through them long ago. Now prepare to die." Suddenly, the first prince's guard tried to intervene. but Lakis immediately blocked his path. The magic in Lakis's hand was already stirring. He warned the guard, "Don't even think about stepping past me." He immediately summoned a volcanic lava monster and launched an attack. And from his hand, he unleashed a terrifying blood explosion spell. The guard was caught completely off guard, but Lakis showed no mercy, intending to finish him off right there. Meanwhile, Leona had gathered a massive magic fireball in her hand and launched it at the first prince. Unexpectedly, upstairs, their father and his aide were watching this exciting scene. Seeing Leona gain the upper hand, the aide excitedly exclaimed and reported the battle situation to their father. Their father, observing the fight, understood why Leona had chosen the space-distorting necklace last time. It was to redirect magical attacks. He inadvertently revealed a bright smile. As the smoke from the battle cleared, the first prince lay on the ground, battered and bruised. Leona was overjoyed. Kicking the first prince's leg with her little foot, she asked, "Now do you know how strong I am?" The first prince admitted defeat and told Leona to kill him quickly. Leona's expression changed as she recalled the fourth prince saying the same thing when she defeated him. She asked, "Why does everyone here want to kill them?" Then she declared that she only beats people she doesn't kill. And she believed that winning wasn't about killing, but about completely crushing your opponent. The first prince looked bewildered and said he wouldn't attack her again. Unexpectedly, Leona extended her small hand and told the first prince that if he didn't want to get beaten up again, he should become her subordinate. The first prince immediately sat up and asked what she meant. Leona explained, "Just like the fourth prince and the second prince. Become my subordinate number 0 and subordinate number 1. The first prince gave a wicked smile upon hearing this, said there was no problem, and that from now on he would be her 100th subordinate and help her recruit 97 more. After saying this, he grabbed Leona's small hand and pulled her to his side. The next second, he repeated his previous shameless request, "Leona, let's get married." I've never seen such a powerful queen. At only 3 years old, everyone around him had submitted at his feet, and even his father, the ruler of the country, was willing to hand over the throne to him. Leona, with the soul of a witch, turned around because she had witnessed the fourth prince being bullied by the first prince. Out of concern for the fourth prince and the humiliation of having been previously defeated by the first prince, Leona immediately launched an attack on the first prince. However, after a fierce battle, the first prince, originally the strongest in the empire, finally fell at Leona's feet. She successfully subdued him and made him her 100th subordinate. However, the fourth prince had fainted during the battle. But the next day, he suddenly called out Leona's name, surprised to find a pair of hands on his forehead. It turned out that Leona had been by his side all along. The fourth prince was terrified and asked why he hadn't died and why Leona was still alive. Leona responded with disdain, saying that he had only been knocked unconscious, not killed. At that moment, the fourth prince suddenly noticed the first prince sleeping in the chair. He was instantly frightened and panicked, asking why the first prince was there. Leona replied that she had let him go earlier and didn't know why he was sleeping there. Hearing this, the fourth prince immediately understood that Leona had defeated him. He grabbed Leona's shoulders, hugged her tightly, and excitedly praised her as the best. He couldn't believe he had such a powerful younger sister. Leona, however, was almost suffocated by the hug and quickly told the fourth prince to let her go. As soon as he released her, Leona became angry and scolded him for not telling her about being bullied by the first prince. "Did you want to die?" she asked. The fourth prince replied that men needed to save face, and telling her would have been embarrassing. Leona responded by saying they were family, so there was nothing to be ashamed of, and that it was natural for a master to protect their subordinate. This deeply moved the fourth prince, bringing tears to his eyes. He burst into tears. Then, he excitedly hugged Leona again. This sudden display of affection left Leona a little bewildered, because in her past life, her fate as a witch had been tragic, filled with betrayal and murder by men. It had made her distrust everyone. But in this life, her mother, Iperla, had used black magic to summon her soul here, so she could have a family and experience the irreplaceable love of family. And now, Leona seemed to be feeling it. Suddenly, the aide, Jing, strode into the room with an over-the-top swagger. He began to excitedly describe Leona's impressive fight against the first prince. He told Leona she was so cool that he had seen everything, and that from now on, his heart would only beat for her. Leona looked at him speechless, wondering how he had seen it. Unexpectedly, their father suddenly arrived and immediately hugged Leona. Leona was stunned. She asked, bewildered, what was wrong and why he was hugging her. Father didn't answer, but kept asking what she had been thinking. Using the magic necklace to fight the first prince, Leona replied that she knew he would distort spatial magic, and she had wanted to learn it, but the equipment shop had a space-distorting necklace, so it saved her the trouble. But father warned her to be careful. Although the first prince was defeated, this also means the noble factions supporting him will now pledge their allegiance to you. Leona, upon hearing this, appeared unconcerned, as if she had already anticipated this outcome. However, father felt her influence within the empire was somewhat tenuous. Those who served under the first prince might harbor resentment. Hearing this, Leona immediately scoffed. Gesturing towards Kays and the aide behind her, she told father that she had them. Unexpectedly, upon hearing Leona's high regard for them, the two became so excited they bumped heads. But father felt that just the two of them were far from enough. He then questioned her about her ambition to become emperor. Unexpectedly, Leona told father that the first prince was now her subordinate, and the second and fourth princes were also under her thumb. Even the bald four sages were as well. This sent father into a spiral of confusion. He wondered what Leona had done to bring even the unyielding first prince and the proud four sages under her control. But with so many people protecting Leona, father didn't press the matter further. However, on the way back to their rooms, Kay suddenly wanted to ask Leona something. By this time, Leona was already extremely sleepy and urged him to ask quickly. Unexpectedly, Kays inquired about the secret of her soul. What gave this girl the courage to make a 300-year-old witch willingly bare her heart? Leona, who possessed the soul of a witch, had previously argued with the Modu Lord in the library. They inadvertently talked about their respective pasts. But all of this was overheard by Kays outside the door. So, while carrying Leona back to her room, he suddenly brought it up. Leona's heart skipped a beat. She began to tremble nervously in his arms. Seeing this, Kays quickly comforted her, telling her highness to calm down, explaining that he had only overheard their conversation. So, it was alright if she didn't answer. But Leona's tears welled up in her eyes, as if she were recalling painful memories. She then clutched Kays' chest, her emotions overflowing as she burst into tears. She apologized to Kays, saying that she hadn't intentionally kept it from him, but she was afraid they would kill her if they knew the truth. This was too much for Kays to bear. He immediately told Leona to stop talking. Then, bending down, he gently reassured her not to worry. Even if the whole world turned against her, he would always be on her side, and he would always love her. Deeply moved, Leona threw herself into his arms. However, she was still worried that Kays wouldn't accept her if he knew she was a witch. So, she tentatively asked if it would be alright even if she was a witch. Kays was taken aback, but firmly reiterated that he would still love her. Truly touched, Leona recounted her tragic past life to Kays. From being an orphan with no parents, to the first warmth she received from man, the deception of having monster blood injected into her, and the betrayal and brutal murder of Lakis, the man she fell in love with at first sight. Each of these events stabbed at Leona's heart, making it impossible for her to trust anyone. Kays' heart surged with emotion. Leona hugged him tightly once more. She expressed her deep gratitude, saying that they had illuminated her path forward and that she would cherish them. As soon as she finished, she immediately urged Kays to keep this secret. However, Kays suddenly realized that the Modo Lord had known about this before him. He instantly became filled with murderous intent, wanting to confront him. And so, Kays learned the secret of Leona's soul. The next day, Leona, however, became incredibly busy. Ever since defeating the first prince, those who had previously served him began flocking to her side. Suddenly, the sixth princess ordered and arrived, even clutching a teddy bear. Kays immediately blocked her path. Unexpectedly, the sixth princess wasn't the least bit afraid. Instead, she pushed Kays' dagger aside, blinking her large, innocent eyes, and declared she was there to play with Leona. But Leona claimed to be too busy. With that, she produced an appointment list and told her to write her name down and wait her turn. Unexpectedly, after being refused, the sixth princess did something unbelievable. She started throwing a tantrum, rolling around on the floor. This forced Leona, as the younger sister, seeing her older sister acting so shamelessly, to reluctantly let her sit down. But during their conversation, the sixth princess kept probing about Leona's relationship with the other princes. This caught the attention of the servant. After the sixth princess left, the servant warned Leona to be wary of the sixth princess in the future. Perhaps, like the eighth prince, she had ulterior motives. At this point, Leona also suddenly felt that the sixth princess's visit was indeed somewhat suspicious. But she was truly exhausted. She immediately told the servant that none of them could defeat her now, so there was no need to worry. The servant looked relieved after hearing this. Then, crouching beside her, the servant said, "Your Highness, from now on, you must always be like this, never injured, never sick, and grow up happy and blessed." Having said this, the servant affectionately leaned against Leona's forehead. Just like that, she once again felt the love from the servant. But outside the door, the four sages, unable to see Leona, started arguing with the people outside. How busy could this little girl be? Even her own sister nearly had her visit refused. People needed appointments just to see her. Her sister only managed to stay by acting spoiled on the spot. As the 12th princess, Leona, simply because she defeated the first prince, whom everyone feared, was now sought after by countless people. Therefore, she had an endless stream of visitors every day. Looking at the packed visitor list, Leona felt helpless and just wanted to lie down and sleep. But unexpectedly, just after the sixth princess left, another commotion arose at the door. The four sages were furious at being unable to see Leona. They all declared that the 12th princess was not only useless, but also extremely disrespectful. They had been promised an audience, but were stood up. However, at this moment, Leona's bald teacher suddenly spoke up for her. He angrily explained, "Don't talk nonsense. The 12th princess is a great scholar." Then, placing his hand on his chest, he solemnly declared, "Leona is my teacher. You mustn't speak of her like that." Suddenly, it felt as if a halo of light shone from the teacher's head. Meanwhile, the 12th princess Leona, using the excuse of being too tired and needing rest, declined to meet the four sages and secretly went to the library with Case. Just then, the aide, Herrick, suddenly appeared again. Looking at Leona with an expression of adoration and fondness, he said, "Long time no see. You become even cuter. Can I poke your little cheek?" Before Leona could speak, he had already reached out and poked her cheek. At the same time, His Majesty the Emperor also appeared, Case behind the Emperor with lightning speed. But completely unexpectedly, the Moto Lord had already arrived one step ahead. The Emperor immediately glanced disdainfully at the Moto Lord behind him. "It's been a long time, Moto Lord." However, at this point, the embarrassed Moto Lord quickly changed the subject and greeted Leona. Faced with the now overcrowded library, Leona just wanted to find an excuse to slip away. The next second, Leona seemed to have thought of a way. She fiercely asked the Moto Lord, "Who allowed you to come here? Do you want to die?" The Moto Lord hurriedly asked, "Have you been waiting for me?" Leona replied, "Of course. I have to give you a good beating today." With that, Leona grabbed the Moto Lord's ear and dragged him away by force. While doing so, she didn't forget to wave goodbye to her father and Case. At this moment, Herrick, standing to the side, was furious. The Moto Lord had just taken Her Highness the Princess away, carried her off. Faced with Case's, the aide's complaints, the Emperor calmly stated that the Imperial Princess must have something to discuss with the Moto Lord. However, he added, the Moto Lord must never be allowed to enter the Imperial Palace again without permission. Meanwhile, Leona was apologizing for her actions. The Moto Lord was puzzled. Why was the Imperial Princess acting so mysteriously today? Had he done something wrong again? Then Leona revealed that Case had discovered her secret. This instantly terrified the Moto Lord. Fortunately, Leona explained, she had confessed her true identity to Case, and Case wouldn't harm her because of it. However, the Moto Lord still seemed disappointed. Just as Leona thought this might cause serious consequences, the Moto Lord calmly stated that it was no longer a secret between just the two of them. Before he could finish, Leona punched him. Then, she suddenly stopped and asked the Moto Lord if he would break off his contact with Lakis. The Moto Lord said he wouldn't give up so easily. Leona quickly warned the Moto Lord that Lakis was far more dangerous than he thought and that he should be careful. However, the Moto Lord wasn't afraid. Instead, he happily asked Leona if she was worried about him. He then asked where the little shoes he gave her were. Leona rolled her eyes. Only this old man could change the subject so quickly. Elsewhere, the Emperor was sternly questioning the old man about why he couldn't forbid the Moto Lord from entering the Imperial Palace. Saying this, his body was enveloped in blue ice, terrifying the old man. Her perverted older brother actually wanted to marry his 3-year-old sister, and when his sister refused, he became even more persistent. Leona with the soul of a witch reborn, had become incredibly popular after defeating the feared first prince. She had to meet with visitors every day, according to a list, which exhausted the 3-year-old princess. To avoid everyone, Leona used the excuse of needing rest and snuck off to the library. However, as soon as she arrived, she found Kaze, the Moto Lord, and even her father waiting for her. Resigned, Leona used the Motu Lord as a distraction and slipped away. But upon returning, she found a room crowded with people arguing over who would see her first. The sixth princess even suggested playing rock, paper, scissors to decide who got to talk to Leona first. Just then, the first prince burst in, shouting Leona's name. The noisy room fell silent. It became so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The first prince then ordered everyone to leave, saying he needed to speak with Leona. The silence was immediately broken. The sixth princess and the fourth prince protested, saying they were there first. However, in the next second, the first prince raised his hand, and a ball of magical light appeared. "Looks like you two are getting bold," he said. Leona angrily asked the first prince what he was doing and if he wanted to die by showing off magic in front of her. Without a word, the first prince gave Leona a rose. Leona stared at the flower reluctantly. What was wrong with the first prince? Was he insane? Seeing their opportunity, the sixth princess and the fourth prince quickly slipped away, saying they would come back later and not disturb Leona. Leona noticed that her bald teacher hadn't left. She gave him a book, claiming it was a deciphered text she had compiled, and warned him that he was dead if he betrayed her. The bald teacher, perhaps without even looking inside, or perhaps thinking it was a very advanced magic book, was proudly sent away by Leona. Seeing this, the first prince remarked that she had even fooled the four sages. Leona immediately replied that she was just joking and asked why he was taking it so seriously. However, the first prince didn't beat around the bush. He asked Leona if she had thought about their marriage. Before the first prince could react, Leona slapped him. "Only a lunatic would want to marry a 3-year-old, she said. She thought the slap would bring him to his senses. But the first prince simply asked if she would consider it when she was older. Leona was disgusted. How could her brother be so shameless? He immediately declared it absolutely impossible, saying he would never like the first prince. The first prince continued with his manipulative words, asking why she didn't like him. Leona was furious. There was actually another one, just like the Moto Lord, Jellos. If they were put together, they'd be a perfect match. She then yelled at the first prince to get lost. Seeing this, the first prince immediately offered a pinky promise. If Leona accepted him, he would stop killing. Leona wouldn't fall for such childish tricks. "Can we be done with this? I won't marry you. Not now, not ever." The first prince declared that even if he became emperor, he wouldn't give up. Leona raged, "The throne is mine. I'll steal it from you, and you won't even dare look at me." Then Leona forcibly drove the first prince away. As he left, the first prince suddenly stopped, turning back to warn Leona to be careful of the sixth princess's orders. Leona was puzzled. Why did the first prince keep mentioning the sixth princess? What plot were they up to? Would it threaten her? A 3-year-old little girl scolded a servant until he knelt on the ground, and then rewarded him with a slap. She even trampled on flowers given to her as gifts and used fire magic to attack those around her. The 12th princess, Leona's recent behavior was strange to those around her. The nobles were increasingly curious about her highness. That day, they were waiting at the door again, hoping to approach Leona. They happened to see Leona passing by and called out, "Your Highness." "Greetings, Imperial Princess. We all wish to see you." But before they could finish, Leona's unusual reaction startled them. She suddenly cried out, "So scary. I hate you all." Then Leona ran away. The crowd was confused. Is this the legendary Imperial Princess? Isn't she just a little kid? Could we have been tricked by the four sages? Elsewhere, the fourth prince was on his way to see the Imperial Princess with a bouquet of flowers. He secretly fantasized that the bunny would love them. But as soon as he arrived in the back garden, he saw that the bunny in his heart wasn't her usual cute self. Leona was viciously scolding her servant. She even slapped him. The fourth prince stopped, saying he had just arrived. Leona retorted, "Who asked you to come?" The fourth prince then offered the flowers to Leona. The next second, Leona threw them on the ground and stomped on them. "What's the point of bringing a bunch of weeds?" she said, leaving without looking back. The fourth prince was left standing there dumbfounded. Leona hadn't stopped yet. Kaze came to visit. Kaze said, "I missed you so much. You're still so cute today." Leona responded with disgust, saying she could list 100 reasons why she hated him. "Don't ever come looking for me again." At the same time, Leona's body emitted sparks of fire. She mercilessly unleashed fire magic at Kaze. The next second, the fire struck him. but Kay's didn't dodge. Perhaps he was willing to accept the Imperial Princess's punishment. Meanwhile, in the Black Rose Palace, Kays was carefully cleaning Leona's ears. Leona seemed unaware of her strange behavior these past few days. She asked Kays, puzzled, "What's been wrong with me lately? I've been sleeping all day, but I feel exhausted." Kays seemed to understand something. He casually said, "Maybe you're possessed." Leona replied, "How can you even say that? There are no such things as ghosts in this world." At that moment, Kays came to visit the Imperial Princess again. He remarked, "The Imperial Princess looks so cute lying down like this. Even cuter while getting her ears cleaned." He then slapped himself. "Now's not the time for this. Even if the Imperial Princess is cute, I can't forget the important matter." Leona thought, this guy is getting weirder and weirder. Kays' tone became more serious. He asked Leona, "Did you cry in front of the nobles today?" Leona replied, "What are you talking about? I've been in my room all day." This left Kays, and Kays even more perplexed. Leona then made a face, startling Kays. But he was also confused. Why did everyone say she had gone out? There could only be one answer. It was really haunted this time. The answer further shocked Kays. He said he wouldn't be able to sleep tonight and asked if he could win this round. Annoyed, Leona immediately drove him away. Leona stood blankly in the cold palace, lost in thought. A bone-chilling wind passed through her body. She knew that everyone around her loved her very much. In each of their hearts, Leona was a virtuous imperial princess, especially her adorable 3-year-old appearance, deeply loved by everyone. Now, she seemed like a different person, frightening. She probably didn't even know what had happened. Meanwhile, Leona angrily pushed open the door. A servant hurried forward and asked where she had been. However, Leona retorted, "Are you even my mother? A nanny who chatters all day long is simply too presumptuous." She completely stunned the servant. At this moment, a gust of cold wind blew in from the window. Leona extended her fist and punched the servant. The 3-year-old girl actually beat up her nanny. Not only that, but she also drove her out of the palace. As the 12th imperial princess, Leona should have been deeply respected by everyone around her, but recently her personality had changed drastically. She had become short-tempered, and even those close to her were tormented by her. It made everyone wonder if Leona was possessed by a ghost. To find out the truth, Leona decided to hold a secret meeting. She demanded that everyone truthfully describe her recent behavior. The 4th prince and Kays both described what had happened. Leona almost went crazy after hearing their answers. Then she turned to her nanny and asked what had happened. The nanny sadly lowered her head and expressed her confusion. Why was Leona so strong? Fortunately, she dodged in time. Otherwise, she might have been sent flying by Leona's punch. Not only that, but she was also angrily driven out of the palace. After hearing the nanny's answer, Leona finally couldn't contain herself. She was enduring it all alone, yet they were still moving her. She immediately turned to leave. Everyone asked where she was going. She firmly stated that she was going to beat someone up. On the other side of the palace, the 6th princess stared at herself in the mirror. She was full of resentment. She wondered how a servant could be so strong. Thinking of this, the 6th princess suddenly opened a drawer and looked at the potions inside. She pondered how to kill Leona. However, before she could react, the 6th princess's head was hit by something from behind. "Are you trying to kill me? It seems you must die by my hand today." Who was speaking? The 6th princess turned around angrily. She saw the 12th imperial princess, Leona, floating in the air. In the next second, Leona was surrounded by countless purple magic circles. Countless wind chimes echoed throughout the palace. Before the 6th princess could dodge, Leona had summoned countless magic missiles flying towards her. The powerful magical flames instantly illuminated the entire palace. They even damaged the 6th princess's favorite doll. She warned the 6th princess that only she had the right to treat Kays and Nita however she pleased. Even her nanny, only she could scold. However, the 6th princess said, "Aren't you going to be the emperor? If you're going to be the emperor, you can't have anyone around you. You might be killed by them someday. What if someone threatens you with their lives? What will you do?" Leona was taken aback. Then she solemnly told the 6th princess, "That's because you're too weak. So you can't protect anyone. I'm not that weak. I won't be so despicable as to let my own people die." Facing the 3-year-old Leona, the 6th princess seemed to feel both awe and hatred. She was in awe of Leona's young age, yet she had countless people around her. She hated Leona. Why could she defeat the powerful 1st prince with such fire and fury? Why couldn't she even protect her own mother? Her eyes welled up with tears. Her complex emotions caused her to lose control. Then she summoned powerful black swamp magic. The next second, Leona was completely surrounded. He declared fiercely that this was the comfortable magic created by his mother, and Leona would absolutely not be able to escape. However, Leona knew that with her own strength, she could break free from this magic, but it would consume a large amount of power. It might even endanger the sixth princess's life. Faced with the sixth princess's constant taunts, what would Leona choose? To be swallowed by the dark swamp, or to break free from the magical predicament? This 3-year-old little girl was too strong. She defeated her opponent with just one move. And in the face of her opponent's deadly magic, she could easily counterattack. Just now, Leona learned that the sixth princess was the one who framed her. After learning the truth, she came to the sixth princess's palace. However, facing Leona's attack, the sixth princess didn't retreat at all. She directly used the swamp magic taught to her by her mother. Leona knew that she could easily break the swamp magic, but it would definitely consume a lot of energy and might even endanger the sixth princess's life. But if she didn't break free from a magical predicament in time, she would inevitably be trapped in the endless swamp abyss. At this moment, a violent wind suddenly arose in the room. Gusts of magical hurricane swept in. The storm carried a dazzling bright light, blinding the sixth princess. At the same time, a large hand grabbed Leona's small hand. Leona looked closely, and it turned out to be the Moto Lord Jiro's coming to protect her. The Moto Lord thought that Leona would definitely praise him for his appearance. But then, what followed was a beating from Leona. The Moto Lord wondered why he was still being beaten even though he had arrived. Leona said, "How dare you ask? I've been in the swamp for half a day, and you just showed up." The Moto Lord immediately looked at the sixth princess and asked Leona, "What are you going to do with that thing?" Leona replied, "Speak properly. How can you call her a thing?" Then the Motu Lord angrily declared that he would deal with the sixth princess for Leona. However, Leona coldly said that she wanted to talk to the sixth princess. The sixth princess, with an unyielding expression, said that if the Motu Lord hadn't appeared, Leona would have already died by her hand. Leona replied disdainfully, "You're synthesized swamp magic. I can break it in seconds. I just didn't want to expend a lot of energy. Besides, if I did that, you might be dead." The sixth princess stared fiercely at Leona. She didn't believe her magic was so weak that it couldn't even trap a 3-year-old girl. Leona continued, "I saved you. You should thank me." The sixth princess immediately said that Leona was talking nonsense. It was the magic taught by her mother. How could it be broken so easily? Seeing the sixth princess's persistence, Leona sighed lightly. Then she snapped her fingers, saying this kind of magic is easy to imitate. The next second, the sixth princess was surrounded by the same swamp magic. How could this be? The sixth princess was filled with countless questions. Leona calmly said, "To protect yourself, you must first become strong." At this moment, more and more magical predicaments appeared around the sixth princess, like ferocious beasts. In an instant, they could devour the sixth princess. But the sixth princess was stunned. Too many memories flooded her mind. Perhaps, as Leona said, it was because she was too weak that she couldn't protect her mother. But she just didn't want her mother to be hurt. She knew that those children who wanted to seize the right of inheritance would hurt each other for the throne. After all, wasn't her father the only surviving emperor among the 38 children from the previous generation? Thinking of this, the sixth princess didn't realize that she was sinking deeper and deeper into the swamp magic. Just as the sixth princess was about to fall into the abyss, Leona grabbed her hand and rescued her from the predicament. Leona asked in confusion, "Why did you sink yourself? Didn't you know you would die if you didn't come out?" The sixth princess was out of breath and couldn't speak for a while. Leona solemnly said, "I want to become the emperor, but I will definitely not hurt anyone, including your mother." Then Leona patted the sixth princess's shoulder. She said that she would protect her and her mother. The sixth princess was deeply moved. The next second, she couldn't hold back and burst into tears. Leona quickly stepped forward to comfort her and told the sixth princess that she could bring her mother over tomorrow. Leona immediately turned to confront the Moto Lord, demanding to know why he arrived so late. The Moto Lord explained that he had more important matters to attend to. Leona expressed her doubt, mentioning the rumors that there was no one left in Western Moda. "What could you possibly be busy with?" she asked. The Moto Lord replied, "I must make preparations for King K's arrival." Leona froze. King K's wasn't that Lakis, her ex-boyfriend. What was he doing here? This 3-year-old girl was actually a 300-year-old witch. But 5 years ago, she was killed by the one she loved. Now, reincarnated, she had become the daughter of her former enemy. Faced with all of this, Leona's desire for revenge grew stronger each day. Just now, she had learned from the Motu Lord that the kingdom of K's would soon be visiting the Hashi's empire. And the visiting prince of K's was none other than Lakis, her lover from her past life. Therefore, Leona desperately wanted to see her enemy. Early that morning, without even eating breakfast, Leona pushed open her father, the emperor's door. Her first words upon entering were that she wanted to see King K's. Leona explained, "The kingdom of K's as a stellar kingdom has never visited me before. Their visit must have an ulterior motive," she declared, requesting her father's permission to meet with them. After Leona's repeated pleas, her father agreed. Leona then thought that the first prince would surely also be involved. Moreover, he knew so many nobles. Perhaps she could obtain more information about the kingdom of K's from him. She immediately set off with her guard, K's, to the first prince's palace. On the way, they encountered the sixth princess. The sixth princess said she had a gift for Leona. Leona opened the box. Inside was a lovely wooden puppet, but Leona, upon seeing it, cried out, "Mother." The puppet was the spitting image of Leona's mother. The sixth princess then said, "Don't wonder why I'm giving you a gift. It's not because I like you. You hit me, and I'll hit you back." Leona wondered if she had come to deliver a gift or a challenge. However, she adored the puppet. As Leona pondered this, the sixth princess waved goodbye, declaring her intention to surpass Leona's mother and become a great puppeteer. Leona looked at the puppet in her hands with a warm heart. This scene was witnessed by her father, the emperor, who was standing behind her. The emperor seemed to share Leona's feelings. It was someone from Athela. He thought he must be mistaken. Seeing Leona's sadness, the emperor immediately went to her side and picked her up. Leona quickly cheered up. "Papa, you're the best." Looking at his adorable daughter, the emperor felt a surge of warmth. He couldn't understand why he was becoming increasingly soft-hearted. He was the only survivor of the succession struggle in his past life. Aside from being cold-blooded, he didn't seem to have any other defining traits. Now, facing his daughter, he actually felt warmth. Had he truly changed? The emperor fell into deep thought. The scene changed. An elderly woman looked out at the bustling city and asked the young man beside her, "Where is this?" The young man replied, "This is Anath, the capital of the Elan Duchy." The old woman was surprised. "The Elan Duchy still exists. I thought it was destroyed by the Duke 100 years ago." She then asked the young man how to get to the Hashi's empire. The young man explained that the road to the Hashi's empire had long been blocked. Now, there are only two ways to reach the Hashi's empire. One is to obtain the empire's approval, and the other is to travel with a merchant caravan. But even then, you need a pass. 100 years ago, the Elan Duchy and the Kingdom of K's were at war. When the duchy was on the verge of defeat, they requested aid from the Hashi's empire. The condition for assistance was the right of passage between the duchy and the empire. Therefore, without meeting one of the two conditions, not even a bird could fly through. To thank the young man for his patient answers, the old woman, without hesitation, pulled out a handful of gold coins and gave them to him. The old woman thought to herself, "I must hurry and see my child. She takes after me, so she must be beautiful and powerful. What should her name be?" The old woman promised to keep him by her side, raise him well, and make him the best on the continent. Having watched for so long, do you know who the old woman is? The man merely greeted the little girl before her father instantly froze him solid. Facing the man frozen into an ice sculpture, the little girl, Leona, stuck her tongue out at him. Just now, Leona learned that the Karel kingdom would be visiting the Hashi's empire. And the visiting king of Karel was none other than her ex-boyfriend, Lakis. Burning with a desire for revenge, Leona immediately turned and headed to the first prince's palace. At that moment, the first prince was discussing the meeting with King K's and the nobles. Unexpectedly, Leona burst through the door, angrily asking the first prince why he hadn't told her about the meeting with King K's. However, the first prince said he simply forgot and that it wasn't something he needed to tell her. Leona was furious. How dare he speak to me like that? He's asking for a beating. Yet, in the next second, the first prince embraced Leona and apologized. "I was angry because I thought you came to see me just for that, so I spoke harshly." Everyone was stunned. They never expected the first prince to apologize. He then introduced the guests present to Leona. Leona declared she didn't want to know those ugly people. But the next second, she remembered her servant's advice to always be kind and approachable to nobles. Leona sighed. "It's a pleasure to meet you all. My name is Leona." The nobles blushed. How could there be such an adorable creature? Leona then told the first prince to take her to the meeting with King K's. She explained that she intensely disliked that kingdom. The first prince immediately responded, "If you dislike the Karel kingdom, I'll destroy it for you." Just as Leona wondered when the first prince had become so valiant, he added, "As long as you marry me." This answer nearly made Leona vomit. In the blink of an eye, it was time for the meeting between the two nations. The meeting hall was bustling with activity. Faced with the constant stream of guests, the emperor immediately recognized the Karel king, worthy of the magic swordsman who plunged the continent into fear. Although they were far apart, the emperor could easily sense the magic power emanating from the magic swordsman. At that moment, King Kaze was fuming over the perceived slight against him. He secretly vowed that once he conquered the continent, he would make them pay for this humiliation tenfold. At the same time, Leona appeared in his line of sight. King Kaze approached Leona and introduced himself. Leona was stunned. He has the nerve to approach me. How shameless. The next second, Leona rushed into her father's arms. She angrily declared, "This guy approached me." The emperor couldn't tolerate this. His body instantly radiated a powerful magical energy that enveloped everyone present. This display of power startled King Kaze, causing him to stumble backward. He quickly explained to the emperor that he was merely greeting the imperial princess. He then made his request. "To strengthen the alliance between our two nations, would you agree to let my child marry the 12th princess?" As soon as he finished speaking, Leona exclaimed, "He must be insane." It turned out that 5 years ago, after this heartless man killed Leona, he quickly married another woman. Shortly after, he had a child. Leona became even more enraged. The first prince and fourth prince immediately drew their weapons, as if a life-or-death duel was about to begin. Seeing this, King Kaze quickly said, "It seems both princes are very fond of the imperial princess. However, this is a matter between two nations. The two princes cannot object without reason. As long as you agree to the marriage, I am willing to grant you the mining rights to the southern mountain range." Faced with King Lakis's relentless pressure, Kaze asked, "Why hasn't your majesty spoken a word?" However, in the next second, the emperor snapped his fingers. The weapons in the hands of the two princes vanished instantly. Then the emperor roared, "Lakis of Corel, you are far too arrogant." Meanwhile, gusts of icy wind swirled around Lakis. Powerful ice magic instantly froze him into a statue. Then, the emperor coldly warned Lakis, "Do not threaten my children. This is my final act of mercy towards you." Lakis was dumbfounded. At that moment, Leona seemed to remember something. She then found the Moda Lord sitting in the corner. Leona said, "Lakis might be suspicious of my identity. He may have tampered with my space." She then said to the Moda Lord, "I'll take you somewhere." How strong can a 100-year-old boy be? He was able to fight a 300-year-old witch to a draw, and he could easily summon incredibly powerful lightning magic. He blasted the earth into pieces, and now the boy has been missing for years. Leona, the witch's reincarnated soul, still vividly remembered this past event. Just now, Leona had met with King Kaze, who had come to visit. Leona had been deeply suspicious of King Kaze's purpose in coming, especially his recent unreasonable request to her father. This made Leona think that King Kaze might already know her secret. Leona then said she would take the Modu Lord somewhere. In the next second, she used spatial transfer magic to arrive in her own space. The Moda Lord wondered why they were there. Leona explained, "Lakis must have tampered with my space." As she spoke, she asked the Modo Lord to help her search. However, the Modo Lord seemed quite frightened. Leona quickly asked him what was wrong. The Modo Lord said he was scared by Leona teleporting them to her space. It was then that he realized Leona was a witch. He said he had always thought Leona was of the Dragon Clan. At that moment, the Modo Lord knelt before Leona. Leona quickly touched his forehead. This guy must be seriously ill. The Modo Lord explained that he had always wanted to meet Leona, believing that perhaps only she could help him find his long-lost brother. Based on the Modo Lord's description, Leona immediately thought of someone. Could it be the Modo Lord's brother? Memories of her past life slowly surfaced in Leona's mind. One day, Leona's past life, Elena, sensed she was in danger. The reason was that, as a witch, she was rumored among humans to be a monster who sucked human essence. Despite hiding, she couldn't escape this seemingly young boy. The boy sat on a rock, playing happily with a spiritual butterfly. Leona asked the boy who he was and why he kept following her. The boy bluntly replied that he was the messenger sent to take Elena's life. In the next second, the boy simply raised his arm, and countless lightning spells filled the air. The powerful magic, accompanied by countless purple electrical cables, instantly blasted the earth into pieces. Then, a massive surge of electricity shot directly toward Elena. After fighting for who knows how long, and seeing that it was getting late without a clear victor, Elena simply lay down on the ground. "I actually fought a human to a standstill. This is so humiliating." She then asked the boy, "You're just a little boy. Why do you have such powerful magic?" The boy's answer left Elena speechless. "Although I look young, I'm over 100 years old." Elena awkwardly said, 100 years old is still a child." The boy immediately retorted, "What's so great about being old? As the saying goes, there are no true enemies, only unfamiliar friends." After getting to know each other, they seemed to have forgotten their previous animosity. Meanwhile, Leona recounted this memory to the Moda Lord. The Moda Lord instantly burst into tears. Leona continued, "No wonder you look so familiar. It wasn't you I met, but your brother." The Moda Lord then said, "My brother was a very powerful magician. I always cherished him, and he always looked up to me as his role model." As he spoke, the Moda Lord started crying again. Leona immediately snapped, "Shut up. Have you cried enough? If so, hurry up and help me find the clues." The Moda Lord wondered if there might be any clues here. Leona pushed open a door, and he was here before. She ran into Lakis when she left. That might not have been a coincidence. He must have tampered with my space. The Moda Lord pondered for a moment, suggesting it might be something similar to summoning magic or something like that. This answer seemed to enlighten Leona. Leona immediately picked up a humanoid sculpture nearby. She explained that it was a storage container. Lakis never opened this container. As long as I hide something here, he'll never find it. So she immediately summoned a powerful magic formation and attached it to the top of the statue. The Moda Lord, standing beside her, was clearly bewildered. Leona explained that when she changes magic spells, as long as this magic formation meets the activation conditions, it will summon something very interesting. Leona declared that this time, she would definitely make Lakis pay. The man had just ascended to the throne, and then personally murdered the woman he loved. What's worse, he married another woman the next day. However, the man didn't know that his ex-girlfriend, being a witch, had always been attracted to dragon bloodlines. Soon after, the witch's soul was reincarnated, reborn as a little princess of the imperial family. Therefore, Leona had planted the seeds of revenge in her heart since childhood. And not long ago, King Kaze, Leona's former boyfriend in her past life, visited the empire. Her long-lost boyfriend seemed to have become even more arrogant. He actually tried to trade a mountain range for Princess Leona of the Empire. This directly angered the king of the Hashi's empire. The magically powerful king froze him into an ice sculpture without any effort. Afterwards, Leona led the Modu Lord to the magic space. Because Leona had encountered King Kaze here before, she realized that King Kaze's visit must have had an ulterior motive. Perhaps they already knew her identity as a witch. After some thought, Leona summoned a magic formation and attached it to a statue, and claimed that she would definitely make King Kaze pay. This seemingly insignificant action would play a crucial role later on. On the other side, King Kaze, having just been frozen by the emperor, felt deeply humiliated. As soon as he returned to his country, he went to meet with the divine official, John. King Kaze implored the divine official to go and check the imperial princess's soul, and claimed that he had confirmed that the 12th princess of the empire was a descendant of the dragon race. It turned out that the kingdom of Kaze had always been a supporter of the first prince of the empire. Not long ago, they learned that the imperial princess had actually defeated the first prince, Rhodes. This series of anomalies made them sense danger. At the same time, King Kaze instantly summoned a powerful magic. It turned out to be a summoning magic formation connected to the witch's space. If the witch used a long-distance teleportation skill to get there, she would directly enter this magic formation and be sensed by him. And just as he was speaking, King Kaze sensed the witch's presence once again. However, what he never expected was that Leona had already established a teleportation link between the magic space and the Moshog forest. The magic seemed a little too late now. The magic formation instantly lost control. The formation was distorted by blue beams of light and gradually grew larger. Accompanied by a series of roars, King Kaze and the divine official felt an earthquake-like tremor. And at this moment, a giant wing appeared above everyone's heads. In the next second, it transformed into a massive dragon. Meanwhile, Leona was gloating. Lakis and the others must have suffered a lot last night. After all, it was Leona's masterpiece. However, it was just a prank. She had to become stronger. Thinking of this, Leona declared that she must have her own forces. The Moda Lord, however, mocked Leona, saying she had said this thousands of times. Even if she had lofty goals, she should at least wait until she was 5 years old. Leona asked the Moda Lord if there were any other opportunities to demonstrate her abilities. After some thought, the Moda Lord remembered the upcoming hunting competition. He believed that since Leona was familiar with magical beasts, she should easily win. As he spoke, he noticed Leona trembling beside him. Just as the Modi Lord wondered why the imperial princess was suddenly so timid, Leona suddenly burst into excited laughter. She expressed her delight, saying the opportunity had arrived. She clearly understood that participating in the hunting competition would attract more people to her side. But Leona wasn't the only one eager to participate in the hunting competition. The fourth prince had already impatiently arrived at his father's palace. He could hardly stop talking as soon as he saw his father, expressing his desire to join the competition. He promised to capture a good magical beast and gift its magic stone to his father. Witnessing the exchange between the emperor and his child, Kays, the aide, felt touched. He remarked that the emperor was different now. Leona's presence had changed him from the cold-blooded ruler of the past into a warm father. The entire atmosphere of the imperial family had changed considerably. The emperor was lost in thought. Leona had indeed played a significant role in his transformation. As the two chatted, Leona barged in. Kays was speechless. He hadn't finished flattering the emperor yet. It was truly ruthless. As soon as Leona entered, she told her father she wanted to participate in the hunting competition. Considering the dangers of the competition, her father immediately refused. However, Leona deployed her trump card. In the next second, she summoned powerful red crystal magic. Her father, shocked, was left to reconsider his decision. Just how strong was this little girl? At only 3 years old, she possessed top-tier magic that surpassed others by 100-fold. She didn't even flinch in the face of danger. She could not only easily defeat steel magical beasts weighing tens of thousands of tons, but even faced with the untouchable millennial dragons. She could capture several in one go and roast them for food. Before this hunting competition, no one expected Leona to possess such formidable power. Even the emperor was reluctant to let his daughter participate in such a risky challenge. However, Leona played her trump card. In the next second, she directly summoned powerful red crystal magic, aiming to prove her current strength to her father. This display not only shocked her father, but also left Kays, the aide, trembling. Leona, meanwhile, beamed. Before her father could speak, she declared that he had already agreed to her request. She then confidently told her father that she would catch him some dragons and roast them for him. These words further startled her father and Kays. In the eyes of ordinary people, dragons were incredibly swift beasts. Only exceptionally powerful mages could contend with them. Perhaps, besides her father, very few could truly tame a dragon. Who else could possess such power? Although her father hadn't fully agreed to Leona's request to participate in the hunting competition, Leona triumphantly went to boast to the first prince. Upon hearing this, the first prince's expression quickly became tense. He knew that if Leona participated in the hunting competition, she would surely leave a deep impression on the nobles. And if she performed well, it could shift the support of his faction towards her. The thought made the first prince uneasy. He immediately retorted to Leona, claiming that he had been on the battlefield and survived encounters with countless magical beasts. He told Leona to give up, as he would undoubtedly be the victor. Before he could finish, a sarcastic voice interjected, "That's not necessarily true." The sixth princess suddenly appeared, angrily declaring, "My Leona is the strongest. Don't talk nonsense about my sister." Leona, meanwhile, looked disgusted. When did she become hers? The first prince was bewildered. Had the sixth princess lost her mind? The sixth princess, he knew, was never like this. Learning of Leona's intention to participate in the hunting competition, the sixth princess unhesitatingly offered Leona a bottle of potion. Leona wondered what was inside. The sixth princess turned and left, still aloof, but seemingly offering subtle, indirect help to Leona. What wonders are hidden within this magical bottle? To prepare for the upcoming hunting competition, Leona must do her homework. So, in the following days, the Motu Lord supervised Leona's training every day. To highlight her strength, the Moda Lord even created his own training manual. Those who didn't know him would think he was a traditional healer. He claimed that Leona's acupoints were blocked, and he needed to open her meridians for her magic power to be fully utilized. Leona, however, retorted that it wasn't that complicated. Her usual magic training was self-directed, and there weren't so many nonsensical reasons. But under the Moto Lord's patient guidance, Leona reluctantly listened to some of his training secrets. Soon, the much-anticipated hunting competition arrived. This time, the hunting grounds were in the Charlotte Forest bordering the Demon Realm. It was rumored that the Charlotte Forest was teeming with countless magical beasts. The winning condition was to obtain the most valuable magic crystal within 6 hours. And in the Charlotte Forest, the most valuable prize was undoubtedly capturing a wyvern. So, the difficulty of this challenge was self-evident. Leona, however, however, wondered if there would be enough wyverns for her to catch. Before the hunt even began, Leona sensed a murderous aura surrounding her. She understood that she had always been protected. However, this time, acting alone, this might be the perfect place for an assassin to kill her. With K's, the aide's command, the hunting competition officially began. Each contestant entered the mysterious forest, but several hours passed, and Leona still hadn't found a single magical beast. Just as she was puzzled, several mysterious figures appeared above her. It turned out that the magical beasts had been secretly driven away to other locations. Their goal wasn't to assassinate the imperial princess, but to ensure she gained nothing in this competition. This way, the nobles, in their disappointment, would indirectly solidify the first prince's position. But just as they were secretly rejoicing, a giant beast appeared behind them. Simultaneously, clouds of dust and sand swirled around. As everyone fled, Leona leaped forward and raised her right hand. Powerful purple magic instantly enveloped her. In the next second, the magic transformed into a giant iron ball. With a single swing, Leona shattered the head of the gigantic steel beast. However, the 6 hours quickly ended. The contestants showed off their achievements, but then everyone realized something was wrong. Leona seemed to have disappeared. Upon learning of this, His Majesty the Emperor declared that even if they had to level the forest, they would find Leona, a mere 3-year-old girl, yet possessing top-tier magic hundreds of times stronger than others. Not only could she single-handedly defeat a giant beast weighing tens of thousands of tons, but she could also easily handle a ferocious ancient wyvern. She could even extract crystals from magical beasts and create all kinds of top-level magical equipment. Her skills surpassed all the alchemists on the continent. But before this, no one knew Leona was so capable. Therefore, with the arrival of the hunting competition, many noble factions placed their bets on victory, on the more powerful first prince. The hunting competition was about to end, but Leona still hadn't emerged from the forest. The first prince and the fourth prince immediately reported this to their father. Upon learning of his daughter's disappearance, His Majesty the Emperor vowed to level the forest to find Leona. As soon as he finished speaking, His Majesty swiftly unleashed powerful magic, seemingly unwilling to let the forest exist for even a second longer. Fortunately, K's, the aide behind him, persuaded him, calming the Emperor's emotions. Just as everyone was worried about Leona's safety, a rustling sound came from the bushes behind them. It was Leona returning. Leona wondered why everyone looked so distraught. Everyone expressed their worry for her and asked why she had taken so long to emerge from the forest. However, in the next moment, Leona pulled a large bag of magic crystals from behind her. It was known that magic crystals were difficult to obtain. Even the most valuable crystal from a wyvern, the powerful first prince could only obtain one. Yet Leona, alone, had obtained a whole sack of crystals, big and small. It directly dazzled everyone, and the greatest contribution was the bottle in Leona's hand. It turned out to be a gift from the sixth princess, Sherry, to Leona. This item could release a fragrance that attracted magical beasts, and a large part of the reason Leona was able to win this competition was due to it. After the hunting competition ended, the Moto Lord was still wondering how Leona dealt with the powerful steel magical beast. You have to know, even if mages above level 5 teamed up, they might not be able to defeat a magical beast. The Moto Lord immediately responded, "You can actually say such ferocious words in such a cute voice." Then the Moto Lord asked Leona how she would handle the magic crystals. Leona said that as long as the Moto Lord provided her with some materials, she could use these crystals to create various pieces of equipment. It was rumored that on this continent, only genius-level alchemists could create a piece of equipment within a month. But Leona only took a week to create 5 pieces of magical equipment. And what moved the Moto Lord the most was the magic bracelet in front of him. The Moto Lord carefully held it in his hand. The bracelet immediately emitted bursts of intense, dazzling light. In an instant, the Moto Lord disappeared before Leona's eyes. It turned out to be a magic bracelet that could make people invisible. It could follow the owner's movements and blend in with the surrounding environment at any time. The Moto Lord instantly revealed an excited and admiring expression. He wondered how Leona possessed such a skill. Leona also humbly stated that she was a genius. The next second, the Moto Lord directly asked Leona, "While you're making items, could I stay by your side? This is a great opportunity to make a lot of money." But Leona directly replied that she didn't need that kind of money. The Moda Lord quickly added that since the princess had a lot of money, she could share some with him. Speaking of selling equipment for money, Leona wanted to ask the Moda Lord how to sell such equipment. The Moda Lord said he could arrange it with the deputy official Kaze. It was rumored that Kaze was famous in the black market back then, known as the Shadow Hand, Lakis, meaning Kaze was like a shadow, able to easily navigate the black market. However, Kaze never engaged in illegal transactions. He would always lend a helping hand to others in the dark. Asking him to return to the black market now might be a bit difficult. When Leona called Kaze over, their guest was confirmed. However, Leona already knew what could move Kaze. She directly gave Kaze a meticulously crafted magic ring. And you know what? It really worked. Kaze immediately put it on his finger and replied, "How could I not handle something arranged by Her Highness?" He explained that he knew where these pieces of equipment would be most popular. After Kaze's explanation, Leona seemed to have a clearer understanding. If she could gain the loyalty of more factions by selling the equipment she made, wouldn't that be even better? However, with the upcoming princess's birthday, it seemed everything was changing. Your favorite manga commentary blogger stopped updating. What would you do? When a manga commentary suddenly switched to novel promotions, what would you do? First, from a fan's perspective, you might unsubscribe. It was a blogger you followed and liked, but now they've stopped updating or switched to other video types. You would inevitably be disappointed. You would wonder why they didn't keep updating. Why didn't your favorite manga continue updating to the end? However, every blogger has loyal fans. Whether they stop updating or release other videos, they will continue to support them. So, for bloggers, I will simply answer your questions. First, why do many bloggers stop updating? Take the manga commentary field as an example. If you are observant, you will find that many previously popular bloggers have less traffic now than before. Now, very few can persist. Many bloggers have either stopped updating or switched to the currently popular novel promotion field. Why? Because any field will have its peaks and troughs. When a manga commentary no longer has the previous bonus period, who would be willing to persist in updating day after day without getting any return? My longtime followers know that you've been waiting for me to update the Imperial Princess comic. But what you don't know is that I've already gone beyond the allowed update scope for this comic. However, I still updated some. Afterwards, I took the risk of copyright infringement, doing things without any return. But I have no complaints. Fans have also told me, for the sake of the account, it's better not to update anymore. Because you like it, I try my best to satisfy you. But every story has an ending. Even if I finish updating it, when I switch to the next one, there will still be people who unfollow. Some people will like it, because everyone's hobbies, everyone's interests are different. Do you understand this? As I just mentioned, there are also many bloggers now switching from comics to novel promotions. Mushi has also decided that in the future, I will present to everyone in a combined format of comics and tweets. When there are good comics, I will update them appropriately. When there are good novels, I will also update them for everyone. Of course, your favorite, Imperial Mother, because the original comic's second season is already ended and the third season hasn't been drawn yet. I will also gradually update the remaining episodes. I hope that no matter what kind of video I make, there will be a group of loyal fans who will always support me. At the same time, I also hope that comic commentary will, in the near future, have better support for us creators. I will continue to work hard to bring you more good-looking comics. Finally, if you have any questions, please leave a message in the comment section. I will try my best to answer each one. Finally, I would like to explain to everyone that this account is currently suspending updates. The follow-up to Her Highness the Imperial Princess and other videos will continue to be updated on a certain sound platform. Just search for Mushi Talks slowly to find it.